afternoon and welcome to the City Council meeting of February 13th, 2017. In accordance with LB 898, a copy of the Open Meetings Act is located in the back of the chamber. And before we begin, let us all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silent meditation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Agendas for the meeting are located just outside the chamber door. If anyone needs a parking pass, you may see our clerk after the meeting. And the order of business of the City Council is as follows. The clerk will call the items listed on the agenda under public hearing, and anyone wishing to speak on an item should come forward after the clerk reads that item. The applicant and those in favor should speak first, and then those who are opposed. The applicant may then make a short rebuttal. Testifiers should clearly state their name and address and then sign in after giving their testimony. Testimony is limited to 5 minutes per speaker, and as a reminder, the timer will sound after 4 minutes. After testifying, please sign in on the sign-in sheet on either side of the podium, and after all public hearings, the council will vote on resolutions and items listed under third reading. On the second and last Mondays of the month immediately prior to adjournment, anyone may speak on any issue not on today's agenda nor planned for a future agenda. Courtesy and decorum are expected of all who come before this body. No one may approach city staff without permission from the council, and no applauding, booing, or other expression of support of opposition is allowed, except through testimony. All cell phones should be turned off and private conversations taken outside the chamber. During the week, if you have a question regarding an agenda item, please feel free to write or call any council member. Teresa, will you please call the first item?
Yes, I would like to remind the public that due to the President's Day holiday, the council will not meet on Monday, February 20th. We do request those giving testimony to please clearly state your name and address and to sign in on the sign-in sheet laying on the either side of the podium. Our first item is our public hearing consent agenda, items 1 through 16.
Okay, would anyone like to testify on these items? I know we have a couple of appointments, so if Tammy and Danae would like to come forward, we'd be happy to hear from you. Welcome. Tammy, would you like to tell us a little bit about your application to be on the Lincoln Electric System Administrative Board?
Sure. My name is Tammy Ward. Would you like me to sign in? I don't know.
Afterwards is fine, yeah.
And I live at 641 Northwest 20th Street here in Lincoln. And the mayor asked me to serve on the LES board several weeks ago. And I thought a long while about it. I've served in public service almost 25 years. And so in doing that, I thought this would be a good way for me to stay engaged at the local level and serve and give back, because as you know, when you serve as a public servant, you can't always give to the community. So it's an opportunity I see to give back and learn and hopefully contribute to Lincoln, and again, stay engaged with the community and serve back. I worked in state government for 10 years, federal government for 12 years, so I paid my dues at the federal government level, and then city government a couple years. So I thought long about it and said yes to the appointment, so it's an honor to be in front of you today. So thank you. I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Danae,
Good afternoon,
welcome.
members of the council. Danae Kalkowski, appearing on my own behalf today, which is unusual for me.
I think you need a good lawyer.
I think you know me, but I've been practicing law in the city of Lincoln for almost 25 years, primarily in the real estate and land use arena. So I've had the opportunity to work a lot with city government, LES, and so know what a great job that they do. And so just am willing to serve and help keep that organization strong and serving our community, in any way possible. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
John.
I forgot to ask Tammy, but do you believe in nuclear energy?
Well, I don't know, John.
That used to be my standard question.
That used to be
I
your
lost
standard
it.
question.
Yeah.
I don't know enough all about it yet, so I'll have to withhold and see what I find out. This is going to be a big learning experience, I think, for both Tammy and I.
Beautiful scenery living next to a nuclear reactor.
Yeah.
Any other questions? She's hoping not, I'm sure, at this point.
Right.
Thank you very much. It's a big commitment to be on the LES board. Would anyone else like to testify on any items on our consent agenda? Okay, Teresa?
All right, if not, we can vote on these items. Items 1 through 4 was introduced by Fellers.
Second.
Second by Carl. Discussion? Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Then items 5 and 9 through 14 were introduced by Raybold.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Carl. Discussion? Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Next then are our public hearing liquor resolutions. Those giving testimony are asked to come forward, raise their right hand for the clerk to administer the oath. After the oath, witnesses shall state their names and addresses. Applicants or witnesses are not required to stay for the voting session. I'll call items 17 and 18 together. They're the application of Bodega's Alley for a Class C liquor license at 1418 O Street and the related manager application of Ryan Detlefson.
I sign it.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
I do.
Thank you, Ryan. Just state your name and address.
It's Ryan Detlefson, 811 South 38th Street Court. I'm here to apply for a Class C liquor license for Bodega's Alley.
Any questions? All right, thank you very much for coming down. Would anyone else like to testify on this item? All right, seeing none, please call the next item, Teresa.
All right, I'll call items 19 and 20 together. They're the application of Blur Parties for a Class DK liquor license at 2501 West L Street and the related manager application of Stacy Lenners. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
Yes.
Thank you. Just state your name and address, Stacy.
Stacy Lenners. The home address is 606 Lakeside Drive, 68528.
Welcome. Can you just tell us a little bit about your application?
Absolutely, thank you. My company Blur Parties, we've been in business since 2011. We're an event production company here in the state of Nebraska, and we are applying for a retail license and catering license to better serve and manage our guests at various events that we host throughout the state. For instance, one being a wine festival we host out at Mahoney State Park every year, in which we work with a lot of Nebraska wineries, and they get their own SDLs. And this year we'd like to add on an area to also highlight Nebraska craft brews, because we bring a lot of people from around the state and out of state to the area, and we want to help better educate them on that. And then also use the license to better assist in some of the other events that we host throughout the year.
Great. Any questions? Carl?
Yeah, so I see a location here. Will there be a physical location where this happens, or are these just catered events in other places?
Yeah, no, good question. Yeah, we actually have a property here. It's 2501 West L. That's our business building warehouse. We have some land there as well. That's where the retail license will be held, and it's an off-sale license, but we won't actually be selling off-sale out of that property. It'll allow us to get the Class K for these other events. And down the road, we just moved into that property in July. Down the road, we may look at expanding, maybe doing some small one-off events there, but not in the immediate time.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you very much. Would anyone else like to speak to this item? You may have a seat.
I'm good? Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Teresa, please call the next item.
All right, next I'll call items 21 and 22. They're the application of Comfort Suites East Lincoln for a Class I liquor license at 331 North Cotner Boulevard and the related manager application of Gwendolyn Ferguson. Hi. Would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Gwendolyn Ferguson, 4110 Dunn Avenue.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm the general manager at Conference Suites, and we are just looking to, we went under new ownership, so we would like to request our liquor license so we can, for our guests.
Any questions? All right, thank you for taking the time to come
Do I
down.
need to sign?
Yes, please. Okay, would anyone else like to testify on this item?
Madam Chair, I'd move approval of items 17 through 22.
Second.
Moved by John and seconded by Roy. Discussion? Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb? Motion carried, 7-0. Next then are our public hearing resolutions. I'll call item 23 together. Accepting the report of new and pending claims against the city and approving disposition of claims set forth for the period of January 16 through 31st, 2017.
Is there anyone here wishing to testify about a claim? All right. Seeing none, please call the next item.
All right, next is item 24, Comp Plan Conformance 16014, approving an amendment to the Lincoln Center redevelopment plan to add the 11th and P Hotel and Lincoln Commercial Club redevelopment project to remove blighted and substandard conditions through the renovation of 2 of downtown Lincoln's older buildings, including the Lincoln Commercial Club building at 200 North 11th and the building at 216 North 11th Street.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Hallie Salem. I'm with the Urban Development Department. Before you today is a resolution for the Lincoln Center redevelopment plan to create the 11th and P Hotel and Lincoln Commercial Club project. This is the project area we are proposing for the area. This includes 2 buildings, the Lincoln Commercial Club building at 200 North 11th Street and the hotel building at 216 North 11th Street. This is the hotel building, and then this is the Lincoln Commercial Club building. The project proposes to restore the historic exterior facade features for the Lincoln Commercial Club, renovate the great banquet room on the 3rd floor, revamp the 4th floor into residential and hotel. Then the 5th floor, there's a potential 5th floor proposed as part of the project. And then it would retain Misty's on the 1st floor and renovate the 2nd floor for commercial office space. And that is the Lincoln Commercial Club building. The hotel building, it is a project that will be 7 stories when complete. The first 4 floors will be renovated into hotel, and and then they'll add 3 additional floors for hotel. And then the first floor would be a lounge with food service. The result will be a boutique hotel with approximately 32 units, 32 rooms. The project also includes the construction of a skywalk between the hotel and the existing garage. Additional improvements include 11th Street right-of-way to blend the P Street streetscape improvements with 11th Street. The $7 to $8 million project will generate approximately just over $1 million in TIF. We're projecting at this point could be up to $1.4 million in TIF. The TIF will be used to support the public improvements and enhancements proposed as part of the project, facade, right-of-way improvements, potentially skywalk improvements. The Urban Development Department believes that but for this TIF, the project would not be completed as shown in the project, and that we have had previous ideas proposed on this exact area, these two buildings, and those were not able to come to fruition. The latest was in 2008. We're going to remove that plan amendment and replace it with this plan amendment. The cost-benefit analysis shows that approximately $116,000 of TIF would be generated each year, and about $19,000 of that then would be foregone by the city each year for the 15 years. And then that would be used toward the public improvements. It's anticipated that the project will generate additional employment in the project area, approximately 10 to 15 FTEs. And then overall, it will support the hotel, the renovated ballroom space. The retail will support other events-related services and businesses in the area. Urban Design approved this project back January 10th. Planning Commission then approved the project on January 18th. And it does several things for the comprehensive plan: preservation of downtown as an entertainment center, residential choices in the area, walkability, and adaptive reuse of existing buildings, and then further supports the Lincoln Center redevelopment plan, consistent and complementary uses, existing land uses, encourages rehabilitation of existing structures, and expands housing opportunity for a 24/7 livable community in downtown. We have representatives here from the development team, Kent Seacrest and Gil Peace, and I am here to answer any questions on the project. I can answer now or after they're done.
I think we do have a question. Cindy?
Thank you. Could you just repeat for me the property tax figures that you mentioned?
Sure. It's expected to generate about $116,000 per year in increment after the base value's taken off, and then that approximately $19,000 of that would be foregone by the city.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
John?
When you say foregone by the city, I don't
Well,
understand.
I should clarify, will not be available for general tax purposes, but will go toward the project for making the improvements in the project area. So the $116,000 per year generated by the project would then be to go toward paying off the bond on the project. $19,000 of that $116,000 would ordinarily be going to the city. It will be going to pay off the bond.
The 19's within the 116?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Is that the base then, or is that part of the tax increment?
The $116,000 would be the tax increment per year.
It's never heard it explained that way. Okay.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Good afternoon, Kent Seacrest, attorney representing 3 different redevelopers on this project, and the architect Gil Peace is going to start.
Good afternoon. Gil Peace with Peace Studio Architects, as Kent said, representing the design team.
Gil, could you please just give us your address?
Sure, 1835 Kings Highway.
Thank you.
Hallie did a nice job of framing the project, so I'm going to skip a couple of the images that I brought, but I will show you a couple and keep it as brief as I can. Let's see, is it up? Yeah, Hallie mentioned the 3rd floor ballroom. If a lot of people in Lincoln aren't familiar with the 3rd floor, this is in the 200 North 11th. This is a historic photo taken in the teens of that space that we are proposing to leave alone as much as possible, add some modern amenities, and make that ballroom available as a entertainment space again. I'll show you another image of what that space looks like today. A lot of the existing historic character has been retained. So the ballroom It does include adding modern amenities, but for the most part, it's making this space available again to Lincoln. And then I am going to jump to the last image and then open it up for questions. So this is what the project is intended to look like when it's complete. You can see the 200, the existing commercial club building, 200 North 11th, and then over here, if you look, you can see that this is the existing portion of the 216 building. As Hallie mentioned, 3 added floors, and when the project is complete, the idea is, and Kent's going to talk about it in a minute, but there are 2 different buildings, 3 different owners, all coming together to make a single project that includes, as Hallie mentioned, the hotel and the ballroom. To connect the 2 and make the 2 work together, there will be a new elevator in the hotel so that you can go directly from the new hotel into the ballroom, and it will help align the existing floors, which are not in any way aligned, and make the 2 spaces function correctly. I also want to reiterate that nothing about this project displaces existing tenants. Misty's is currently on the first floor. There is 1 other tenant in the commercial club building, the 200. Those tenants will stay, and currently there are no tenants in the 216 building. With that, I'll turn it over to questions.
Jane.
Could you point on that drawing where the ballroom is going to be?
Correct, I can. So this is the 3rd floor and the 4th floor of the commercial club building, and I'm going to put up one other image. And if you look at the existing archtop windows here facing P Street, this might help orient you. So here are those same archtop windows that face P Street, and so this is the 3rd floor. And then I didn't want to bring floor plans today, but to give you a sense, there is a U-shaped 4th floor that does wrap around and look down on the 3rd floor ballroom below. So the completed project will have the ballroom and then a number of suites above that would be available to the hotel as well as to the owners as a residence.
So that's where the residential component is on that?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Other questions from council? I would just ask one, the potential for a 5th floor was mentioned, and how would that affect the look of the exterior building, and is that something that's already been sketched out preliminarily or looked at by urban design?
We have not sketched that out yet, and that is something that the owner has brought up relatively recently in the design process, mostly as a reaction to the fact that they know that there's a strong market in downtown for more living. And so if I could, I'll just describe it as best I can. The new elevator is roughly here on this outside wall of the Kindler Hotel, and it does share a common wall with the commercial club. And so what they're looking at is this space above the existing commercial club as a potential opportunity. I expect that we're going to flesh that out a little bit more in the coming weeks and months and determine if that is something that the owner is interested in, but we haven't done it to date.
Okay. Would that go back before his urban design committee? Okay. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Kent Seacrest. This project, or like we indicated, is 2 buildings, 3 developers, and historically they tried to go solo, and solo didn't make it very well because of the complexity of the buildings. And they even tried before to put the 2 buildings together, and that effort failed. The floors are different elevation. What do you do with a grand ballroom? It's a very tough, and the highest and best use is probably not a grand ballroom. You'd fill it in, and which would be a shame, because have any of you been in that room? It's probably one of the most unique, gorgeous rooms you'll ever see in Lincoln, Nebraska. So what's really great here is we have a chance to do not the highest and best use, but what is the historically greatest use, and that is to retain its character and stature, and then complement it with a hotel, small hotel next to it. This will create a new type economic development where the venue can be, where the grand ballroom for special events, weddings, where the patrons can literally go next door and not have to get in a car if they celebrate too hard, and create quite a wedding venue and other opportunities we feel by putting them together and sharing opportunities. But the buildings have massive inefficiencies that we have to overcome, and so this is a classic but-for case. In fact, we're still short $1 million that the developers will have to pick up that are public improvements to make it the P Street corridor turn and see that pretty streetscape start to go up 11th Street and other improvements. So with that, we'd be glad to answer any questions, including I bet Hallie would come up for questions.
Any questions? We often see the same uses for TIF financing, but can you maybe just highlight for what you anticipate the public improvements to be?
Right.
You mentioned P Street, but...
We mentioned P Street, that's quite a bit. The Skywalk's eligible, but where we plan to really focus is on the facades. The old hotel building is one of Lincoln's oldest hotel buildings, oldest buildings, period. People don't realize that. And then the Lincoln Commercial Club is a spring chicken at age, built in 1911, and it has a great history because it used to be the Union Club and then the Sour Club, and this is the genesis of what started out as the Chamber of Commerce many years ago, and it had 4 great purposes that I just love to say because they're still our purposes that we try to do in government and public sector and private sector today. Those include promote economic development in the young capital city back then, promote community improvement, promote camaraderie, and they added a 4th theme, and that is go around the state and try to get other communities to do what they can do. And they would say, purchase whatever you can in your own hometown. However, if a particular item is not available in your hometown, come shop in Lincoln. So again, I think those amazingly, back then, over 100 years ago, are still so this building, to me, represents the genesis of a lot of our key value system along the way. And the facade is what's so amazingly expensive. This grand building, we took away a lot of its greater features, if you saw in those photographs, and we're putting those back in. And, it doesn't theoretically do anything for the inside, but, as we build all these great new buildings in downtown Lincoln, we also need to restore and keep what we can on the great historical ones, because those are the ones, along with the new, but those are the ones we're all going to stop and look at and say, wow. And this is really one of the most iconic buildings, including the ballroom, that Lincoln has to offer. So it's really going into the rehab and restoring features.
Talk a little bit about the schedule, the timing of the whole project. When do you anticipate moving forward after you get through us?
We are working on a redevelopment agreement, literally, and we've had a first and second draft. I think you will see this project back in front of you as early as March. And we want to get breaking ground because of the cycle. You heard about student housing. They had to start when the fall semester starts. Well, we feel the hotel, we want to catch the football season. So we're going for 2/18 opening, and we really want to have all the bugs worked out before that September fall football game of 2/18. So in order to do that, we literally are starting this spring. So it'll be a fast construction season.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak about this item? All right, seeing none, please call the next item.
All right, I'll go on to item 25, Comp Plan Conformance 16012, approving an amendment to the Antelope Valley Redevelopment Plan to add the Telegraph District Phase 2 Telegraph Flats and Telegraph Lofts East Redevelopment Project.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the council. My name is Wynn Yermstead. I'm also with the city's Urban Development Department. And as Teresa said, this is an amendment to the Antelope Valley Redevelopment Plan, adding the second phase of the Telegraph District that many of us know as the 21st and N area. There we go. So this is the project area, and to orient you, this is 21st Street right here. This is N Street. L Street is down here. The second phase of the Telegraph District includes the area here, which is the old Fisher Food Complex, and then a new building on this corner. The first phase, so this is the second phase. The first phase, which is under construction now, is down here. This is what we have referred to as the 401 building, which is that old windowless building that if you've been by it recently, it's no longer windowless. It also includes a parking garage across the street. Part of the Telegraph District, but not part of the plan amendment, is the warehouse, the old Windstream warehouse, which is right here. That's where Aloe is located now, and you've probably seen a lot of activity happening there as well. So there's two subphases, the Fisher Food Complex being renovated into Telegraph Flats. And again, before I show pictures, that's right here. So here's 20th Street and N Street. This is the old dairy building, which is there now. This is N Street N Street is over here. This is 20th Street. So that's one of the buildings that will be renovated. This is the Towel building, which was part of the complex. This is N Street, right out in front here. So I'm sure you've seen the condition of that recently. And this one, before I even show you the picture, I have to apologize for the quality of the picture, but it's kind of in fitting with the quality of the building. This is the old power plant building that's also on the side of the complex. And here's how it will look. Now, those buildings are all there today. So this was the dairy building, the first one I showed you, the Towel building, and the power plant. That awful picture is back here. So the name of this phase of the project is Telegraph Flats. The red brick Towel building, this one, will be renovated to include first floor retail and approximately 4 residential units on the back side. The yellow dairy building, right here, will be renovated and expanded into about 15 residential units as well as first floor retail. The southern section of the building, right here, is really in poor condition, and it cannot be saved and renovated. So that part of it will be demoed and a new addition built there and back here. The power plant building back here will be renovated to provide amenities, social amenities for tenants of the other two buildings. There'll be about 80 off-street parking stalls on the east side of the street, east side of the project, right along here. And across N Street, there's a city-owned lot that we will be selling to the developer, which will also provide parking for it. Most of the Telegraph District, as you'll see when we talk about the streetscape, is intended to be a very urban, very vibrant, mixed-use feel. 20th Street is a little bit different, right here. Eventually, there's additional residential planned for the other side of 20th. So 20th Street will be very much a residential street, and it won't have that urban feel that the rest of the Telegraph District does. Something that will be coming to you before long is a vacation request right along here. There's 4 feet that's needed to get steps built up to the residential units that's currently in the public right-of-way. There's balconies, small balconies there that are designed to be removable. There's currently a sewer underneath there, and those balconies can be removed if access ever needs to be provided to the sewer. So that'll be before you before too long. So the second phase is what's called Telegraph Lofts East. And that's at 21st and N. So here's N Street, here's 21st Street. Phase 1 is up here. So it's this building right here with parking behind it. This is a rendering of what that building will look like. Again, N Street here and 21st Street here. This intersection is really intended to be a focal point of the Telegraph District. It includes about almost 21,000 square feet of retail and restaurant, live-work lofts and multifamily housing, as well as 46 units on the upper floors. This picture shows the proposed this building right here is what we're talking about. And what's envisioned is a companion building at some point across the street. At this point, the developers don't have possession of that building though, so that's a future phase. And I like this picture because it also shows some of the streetscape that's proposed along 21st Street as well as along N Street. And this does include a slight alteration to the bike lane that's there now to allow for parking to go in here. Parking will include about 65 underground stalls and about 200 off-street surface parking, along with additional angle parking that'll be provided along 21st Street. So the third piece of the project is the streetscape. And this is a little bit of a wonky map, I think, but these blue areas are the street faces that will have streetscape. So it connects down to phase 1 down here, all along 21st Street, 20th Street, N Street, and this is M Street, which is not currently much of a street that goes back to the existing Muni building. And the streetscape will include a number of elements, and this is M Street looking back to the Uni building. So you can see there's planters, there's pavers, there's dock, landscaping that goes on. What you don't see here is there's also pedestrian lighting, banners, those sorts of things that are traditionally included in streetscapes. So other plan elements are the Muni building is included in this plan. I shouldn't say plan element. Another feature of this amendment is the Muni building is included, although there's no plans for it right now. The Parks Department will be vacating that building probably in April or the first part of April. So it is a city-owned building. We included it in the redevelopment area just to give us some potential opportunities if anything should come up for that building. But as far as the development is concerned, it's not included for redevelopment at this time. LES has a substation at 21st and N, and we are looking at doing an enhanced screen wall that will go along with improvements with the streetscape project. If you're familiar with Constellation Studios, which is located at 21st and O Street, there's a pretty cool mural on the side of that building. We're working with that artist to see if we can't do something similar along part of the 21st and N Street substation. So other items to note, the project received unanimous approval by Urban Design in January. There was a neighborhood meeting held in January, and about 30 people attended with no opposition to the project. It was unanimously approved by the Planning Commission in February 1st. Downtown design standards will apply here, as well as there will be a PUD coming forward to you. That was also approved by Planning Commission, but we're waiting to bring that through with the redevelopment agreement, and that will include additional design standards for the buildings as well as signs. At that time, you'll see the streetscape markers and logos for the Telegraph District and all of that included in the PUD. Private investment is over $22 million, and we're looking at about 2.8 in TIF, 2.8 million in TIF, and those uses are still being negotiated. We're working on the redevelopment agreement now, likely to include site acquisition, site preparation, and some of the streetscape work. As far as timing, as mentioned, we continue to work on the redevelopment agreement and expect coming back to you with an agreement sometime this spring. They would like to start construction this spring and summer. So that's the timing on it. So the whole project really is, this is what Antelope Valley was all about, was being able to get rid of the floodplain and provide transportation so we could do redevelopment projects like this. So I think this really is the epitome of what we wanted to accomplish with Antelope Valley, and it's exciting to see that it's actually happening. So with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions, and the developer team is here as well.
Jane. When I'm very intrigued. I don't know if I heard it correctly. Did you say removable balconies?
Yes. They will be bolted on, and they can be unbolted too. I'm sure I'm simplifying that quite a bit, but yes, it's a creative solution. As we know, redeveloping building in the built environment can be difficult, and so this is one way we were able to make that development happen and still have access to that sewer. At some point, the developers would like to relocate that sewer, but it depends upon future development of the Telegraph District. So this is a short-term solution.
Okay, thank you. Interesting.
Go.
This is phase 2.
Yes.
How many phases are there?
Well, there are future phases. I don't think the developers know at this point if it'll be 3, 4, 5, if it'll be 3, 4, but there's more to come.
Okay. Less than a cat's lives.
I would anticipate so, yes.
Okay, all right.
We've heard a lot about this project in the past in phase 1 and some of the provisions for parking for both the anticipated office use, and you mentioned the sale of city property for parking. I think the staff report mentioned some on-street parking that would be added. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, on 21st Street and on 20th Street, at this point, there'll be additional parking as well as N Street. And some of that will be diagonal. On 21st Street, it'll be diagonal parking, and as well as some on N Street. I should notice, this is zone B4, and I misspoke at Planning Commission when I said parking isn't required in B4 yet, in this part of B4. It used to be set from 17th and a half east, outside of traditional downtown. There were parking requirements, but I believe you're voting today on an amendment to the downtown design standards and B4 that takes that requirement out. So there aren't parking requirements that they will have to conform with, but of course they want to provide some parking. So the parking that they're providing isn't required, but what they want to do for the project.
And do you know about how many on-street stalls there will be?
I don't. I know how many total there are, but I'm not sure how many of those are on-street and how many are off-street. But I think the developer team might be able to answer that.
Did you have a question, John?
Yes. Well, bringing up the parking, where you've removed that requirement within that area before, what obligation does that put on the city to later provide a parking structure or what have you?
Well, that's a good question. I think that's what we have done in traditional downtown, is there has been that implication that the city would then come in and provide parking garages as we have. At this point, we're not talking about that here. That is, the parking that they need, they are able to provide through existing. In future phases with future development, there's been discussions about potentially doing parking facilities, but in terms of obligation for the city to do it, at this point, there is none.
And just one more question. You mentioned the bikeway being altered. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, it's not very much. It's just moving it, and I can't tell you the dimensions, but maybe one of the developer team can. Well, it's probably shown. Here. So here's 21st again and N Street. It's just right in here to be able to get diagonal parking on N Street. So it's not a huge variation in what's there. And we did work with the designers of the bikeway early on. We've talked about this for quite some time. So the original designers of N Street gave their input on it.
And there's still protection then for the riders. It looks like
Yes.
the parking is then outside of
Yes.
the bikeway. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
It doesn't alter the design, it just moves it, just shifts it.
Thank you. Oh, one more question.
Could you show that again on the
Keep
screen?
putting it away.
Well, the one with the parking on 21st Street, I think that's novel because that's a fairly tight right-of-way there. But you showed the angle parking, I think, from Capitol Parkway.
This one?
There was another one you just had that showed just stripes that didn't have cars.
This one?
Yes, yes. So kind of walk us through 21st, and then that would, and how that, where N Street, and was that looking north then, or
So here's N Street, and this is actually looking south.
south?
So 21st Street, this is the new building here, and on-street parking here and here. And there is some additional right-of-way that will be included here. It's not just existing right-of-way. The right-of-way will actually be expanded somewhat.
Okay.
Exact dimensions I can't tell you, but the developer's engineer probably can.
I would think you would need that, otherwise that's a fairly tight.
Yes, yes.
Good.
Right.
As I'm looking at, maybe I'm in the wrong place, but if you look at that 21st Street, it would be on the west side. Aren't there exits there for a car wash that's currently there?
There is, but that is actually city-owned land. there's a strip, and I don't have a map that shows it very well, or I don't have a map that shows it at all, but the car wash is over here. Well, actually, you can kind of see it on here. This is where the car wash is today. And there's a strip of land that goes adjacent here to 21st, and it's kind of a strange angle. That's where there's recycling back there,
Right.
city recycling. That is all city-owned at this point.
So you would cut off access for the car wash?
Not at this point, and actually, the car wash main access is off of N Street. So the car wash still has access off of N Street. And any access off of 21st Street at this point is we're just letting them use it. It is city-owned, and they do use city access, but my understanding is that their primary access is supposed to be N Street, and this won't change that. They still have their access.
Will you pull that one illustration out showing the telephone museum and maybe give us an update there? Because I know a number of retirees and
Yep.
others were concerned about that.
This is a telephone museum currently. They are working to try to find a new location. The owners of the building, which is Speedway Edo, I think it's just Speedway is the owner, are allowing them to stay until they find a new location. They are in the process of hiring a museum planner to help them identify not only a new location, but what they can do to improve the museum. If some of you I know have gone through it, and it really is a hidden gem. It's amazing what's in that building. Right now they're only open 4 hours a week on Sundays, so hiring a planner to try to find not only, as I said, what would be at a new location, but also how they could make that museum more sustainable, open more eyes available in the district. They would like to stay in or near the Telegraph District, and I think that's the goal, is to try to find something nearby.
Trent.
On the east side of the Muni building, there's a parking lot that's there. I think the Parks and Rec Department uses that a little bit. Also gives a little bit extra parking to the ball fields that, since we're not going to have a community college there, will still be there. Is there any alteration in the access to that point?
No, we have been talking about an additional access that comes up. And there's a new access down by the warehouse that comes off Capitol Parkway, and extending that up to the Muni building. But so many things have changed. The Muni building, so much has been in flux with that. First it was the Parks Department was going to stay, and then it might be southeast, and then now they are moving. So it will stay in city ownership for the time being until we come up with some, and that's a whole nother discussion.
Okay.
But there will still be access to it off of 21st Street.
Okay, I just want to make sure there's a lot of baseball traffic over there, the fields on the east side.
Now, there may not be, I think that's something we'll have to talk about. Once the Parks Department moves out of that, there's a fence there, and they're gonna close that gate.
Okay.
Because it's a vacant building, and we certainly don't want people going back there that aren't authorized to be there when we have a vacant city-owned building there. So I think that's a discussion to have with the Parks Department. I know that is used during Lewis Field baseball games, but with a vacant building there and it being gated, I'm not sure how Parks will address that.
Okay, it might be tough because you have 4 baseball fields that are there. The parking that is on that comes in off of Normal gets pretty
It does.
tight.
It does.
Especially, it gets pretty tight when there's baseball season, and then the fields over there. That's somewhat a shaded parking that's easily used.
And then 24th Street gets pretty full too.
Yeah. I would say if you could just keep it open. There's a lot of cars over there on the weekend during baseball.
Well, that's certainly a conversation we can have with Parks and Rec.
Thank you.
Could you put one more picture back up? And it's the one of looking at the pavers towards the Muni building.
Well, I know it's here. There.
What's going on with the diagonal parking in the middle of that intersection? Is that actually not an intersection, and is that diagonal parking, or is that a yellow car?
It is a yellow car. This is M Street, so 21st Street is running right down here. So it's just showing a car turning in the intersection.
Oh, great.
That diagonal line in there.
That was what threw me off. It looked like parking.
The old Rock Island trail runs through there and actually cuts diagonally through the project area and is now closed. But one of the visions, I should have mentioned that the developers have done a master plan for the whole Telegraph District to really create a sense of place. And one of the elements that they looked at, or one of the features that they looked at, was historically that the old Rock Island line came through here. So this diagonal here that's shown in the pavers is a reflection of the old Rock Island and then the trail after that.
And just one last question about the TIF. I know that that's not really the subject of this hearing, but you mentioned some numbers. How have those changed, given all the changes in the plans for this area? Are those TIF numbers just for Phase 2? Are they independent of the Phase 1 TIF numbers? And did the vote on the bond issue for SEC in any way alter those numbers?
It is just for Phase 2. The 2.8 is just for Phase 2, and the bond vote did not influence that.
Okay, just a question about, I know before the Telegraph District thing, there was another developer
Yes.
that went in, as the Hoppy Brothers.
Mhm.
They went in and they spent a bunch of money taking down, doing some demolition.
Mhm.
Have they been made whole?
No.
Are they going to be?
I think that's still being negotiated.
Okay. So we're going to be asked to approve a project when these other guys are out there just hanging.
Well,
They invested money.
they did. And from a legal perspective, the city is not obligated to reimburse them. There was a redevelopment agreement with them that identified the work that they were going to do that was to be reimbursed with TIF. Those were TIF reimbursable items. The asbestos removal that they did and the demolition they did of the two city-owned buildings. They weren't able to complete the project. So from a legal perspective, we are not obligated to repay them.
Is anybody legally obligated to repay them?
Not as far as I understand.
You see, what I was told by them was not that they were unable to do the project, but the project was taken away from them by the city.
Oh, no. We
Okay.
didn't take the project away. We did the second IFRP, Invitation for Redevelopment Proposals, after that project fell apart. So we didn't take that away. It was, my understanding was that they weren't able to get everything in place that they needed to follow through with the redevelopment agreement. But we do recognize that they put a lot into it, and we have not forgotten that.
They put about $200,000
Yes, they did.
into it.
Yes.
Just to go back to the TIF questions, so $22 million in private investment is just for Phase 2?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mhm.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank
I'm sure we'd love to hear from others who are here.
Good afternoon. Kent Seacrest representing Edo LLC, whose principals are primarily made up of Speedway Motors and Nelnet. And Clay Smith for Speedway Motors is here to be able to answer any questions, as well as Terry Hymas, who's the Chief Operating Officer for Nelnet, is also in the audience. Hopefully, I'm going to show you some images, and hopefully this all works. We'll see if we can get this on the screen. Oh, it's there. Great. I'm just going to try to go through these as quickly, if this machine will let me click. There we go. Right. As Wynn mentioned and did a nice job of explaining, this is Capitol Parkway in different times when it flooded. And this is before the Antelope Valley project. And so this is Capitol Parkway. In the far distance, you're turning the corner going by Lincoln High School. So what happened in the Antelope Valley when it faced, you'll see the purple area. If your eyes are good, you'll see a little purple outline. That's the Telegraph District. And you will see that it's massed inside the 100-year floodplain waters that before the Antelope Valley project came along. And so all of a sudden, when we did the new waterway, that purple area became free of the 100-year flood threat. This is also images of Antelope Valley, traditional downtown. We put in a creek where we buried the pipe about 90 years ago, so the waterway's there. And the Edo, or Telegraph District, is that new area which is on the southeast edge of traditional downtown. We've been transforming the west bank of the creek. Started with Assurity, the Union Plaza, and now the Edo area is coming. And this is just a diagram showing you the size of the Edo area. I'm also showing you over on the west side the Haymarket area. This area is actually bigger than the Haymarket area. It will not be as intense with as many tall buildings or parking garages because it'll be a lower scale, but it is a large, large, large geographical area that people will be pleased to create what I call Lincoln's newest neighborhood. It just happens to be in the middle of an old industrial area. We, as Wynn mentioned, we did a master plan, 120 pages of images, master planning the whole area. These are just some of the illustrations from that master plan. You already saw and approved phase one. This is trying to show you what phase one looks like as you drive up L Street or Capitol Parkway. It had involved these two primary buildings, the windowless building, the 401 that now has windows, and the warehouse, the parking garage. This is what the parking garage will soon look like with its new skin on it. And this is the before of the windowless building, as Wynn referred to it, and the new windows. And that will be, Nelnet will be moving into that next month. So we will be bringing lots of new workers and faces to this area. Phase two, Wynn mentioned these two areas. One is the west side is the Fisher Foods area, and then what we often will call the old Building 10, which will be transformed into a brand new building. Wynn showed you the images of former Fisher Foods. It was a true industrial complex. And this, again, Wynn showed you some of these images, transforming these historic buildings into new reuses of retail and residential, urban residential, work, live, and things of this nature. So you can start to see the porches along the yellow building, those removable balconies and steps that we will have a forklift be able to pick up and move if we had to get to the sewer. And again, these are more images of the new, what we call telegraph lofts. This is the first of the two buildings we hope to build. As you've driven by Telegraph District, you are starting to see the warehouse being transformed, the first floor. The windows have been redone, landscaped, cleaned up the landscaping in the area, and Aloe has moved into it. We are transforming in this phase 12 different city block faces. I don't think of any other project that's tried to tackle 12 different block faces all at once, but we are trying to really create a new sense of place, and that we feel landscaping and streetscape is key along the way. As Wynn mentioned, we will be bringing you a PUD, and you will start to see different markers along the way. So those are just some of the images we wanted to show you. The redevelopment agreement hopefully will be here early spring, and it is a major investment, and there will be a phase 3s and 4s. I don't know how much more, but it's a big investment to try to create a whole new urban neighborhood out of a rundown industrial area. And with that, Clay and Terry and I would be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Roy.
I'll ask the same question about the demolition that was done by the Hoppy Brothers. Is there any, I look at it this way. It wouldn't matter to me who spent that money, but the people that the benefit has been accrued. Somebody would have had to spend that money to take down those buildings, and they're approaching me and saying, what about us? Yeah. So that's my question. What about them?
Well, as you maybe, I don't mean to avoid the question. We weren't there when that happened, and we weren't party to any of those agreements. We're coming in as the second developer of record trying to do this challenging area. We will be negotiating and buying some city land at fair market value. I don't know how else to do it, because we generally have other choices in life. We either buy fair market value land here, or we can go down into other parts of the community and buy fair market value land. So what the city decides to do with the proceeds, that's not our call, but we will be paying fair market value for the property in its current condition. And, it's better that a lot of things did get removed, so the value we're paying will be higher than if we would have bought it before they had not done that type of work.
Other questions for Kent? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to this item? All right. Teresa, please call the next item.
All right, next we'll go on to our public hearing ordinance's second reading. Item 26 is approving the transfer of funds from approved appropriations into the Parks and Rec Department HVAC Project Fund for renovation of the HVAC system at Belmont Rec Center.
Good afternoon, Lynn Johnson with Lincoln Parks and Recreation. This project, or this action before the City Council this afternoon, is really establishing funding for the city cost share of a joint project for renovation of Belmont School and Belmont Recreation Center. I thought I'd talk a little bit to the timing, because this project is off of the standard city budget process timing. LPS has a 10-year facilities plan that they work off, and they prioritize their renovation projects. They had some remaining bond funds that became available, and that moved the priority of this project up. And so now we are working to align city funding with the LPS project at this point, and I understand the challenges associated with that. A little bit of background: the Belmont Recreation Center was constructed in 1992, and it was done with an addition to Belmont Elementary School. At that time, there was a centralized boiler system installed that serves the school building as well as the recreation center. At that time, it was policy that school gyms were not air conditioned, and so the gym at Belmont Recreation Center does not have air conditioning. With this project, the gym will become air conditioned, and actually it'll be making a more comfortable space for some of the summer, programming that we offer in the space. Even though LPS calls this an indoor air quality project, what this really is a building rehabilitation project. They'll do work on the exterior of the building, they'll do work on the interior of the building, they'll replace the heating and cooling system throughout the entire building. The project is being led by Lincoln Public Schools. It's part of a much larger project. I think this is about an $11 million project, of which we have a relatively small component of that. A lot of the discussion today and up to this point has really focused around two different elements or two different options related to the project. We have the option of connecting into the LPS ground source heat pump system, or we have the option of developing a freestanding or essentially a standalone boiler system, and we provided the City Council with cost estimates on both of those options. In my mind, there's really a couple of policy questions here. One is, what's the appropriate payback period when we are doing energy efficient projects within our public buildings? We've never really asked that question before. At least I'm not aware that we have publicly asked that question before. We've made that decision essentially on a project by project basis. I would tell you that the F Street Community Center is now almost 15 years old. And at the time that building was constructed, we made the decision that we were going to use a ground source heat pump system on that building. At that time, the engineers estimated that we would have about a 12-year payback on that system. And we felt that that was a good long-term investment, and so we've done that. We partner with LPS because Calvert Recreation Center is co-located with Calvert Elementary School. The Irving Recreation Center is co-located with Irvingdale Middle School. In both of those instances, those were projects where the LPS approach was to use a ground source heat pump system, and so we followed along and we did the same thing in those two buildings. The other policy question, or the other question I think that we're all wrestling with right now is we've identified a funding strategy. We've identified the funds that can be used to fund the more costly option of the ground source heat pump system. The question before the council is this a good use of these funds? Are there other priorities that would suggest that we don't want to make this longer term investment and that a shorter term investment might make more sense? And so that's, in my mind, those are the two policy questions that are before the council with this project. A little bit about kind of the rest of the presentation this afternoon. J.J. Yost, who is our planning and construction manager, will provide a brief description of the overall work that's going to be taking place within the building. Dan Thompson and Tony Dupsky, from ETI are part of the engineering team on the overall project, and they're here to discuss the two options for the heating and cooling systems, as well as the City Council has seen a life cycle cost payback model that compares the ground source heat pump system with the boiler system, and they're here and they'll be able to answer questions about those. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to JJ, and then the entire team will be available for questions.
Good afternoon, JJ Yost, Planning and Construction Manager for Parks and Recreation. Lynn kind of touched on what the project involves, in that it's a little more encompassing than just the indoor air quality or the replacement and repair of the HVAC system. That is the primary focus, is to update the HVAC system. And it is LPS's intent to do that with a ground coupling heat pump system. But other work that goes along with that is replacement of the roof, the exterior roof, perhaps some tuck pointing or refinishing of the brick if needed on the exterior, lighting, replacement of all the interior lighting with new LED lighting, and then some architectural work, which really consists of replacement of ceiling panels, floor tiles, carpeting, repainting the walls, fixing up cabinets, all those kind of interior things that just come along with removing and replacing the HVAC system, but also just because the facility is aged and it's time to give it those updates. So all of those items are included in the project along with the HVAC system, and are included in the cost estimates that we have presented. And I would be glad to answer any questions about that before letting the engineering team talk about the life cycle analysis.
Jane, then John.
Just a few questions. We think this is a great project, without a doubt, because we've seen the beautiful facilities that have come about at Irving and at Calvert. It's a wonderful partnership, and so we agree that there should be some savings as we move forward on that. But when you look at some of the costs, and I think that's where John and I have some questions about, the roof, they're going to be putting a new roof on the gym side, and we're a partner with LPS on that. We agreed to go 50-50 on that. But can you walk me through the costs for the roof? Because it seems like the roof is quite expensive for the size of the two facilities that we want to upgrade, the gym and the community center.
Yeah, and I'll probably will ask the engineer to maybe give a little technical information, but what you see there is, I believe it's estimated at $12 per square foot. That's kind of an all-in cost for tearing off, removing the existing roof, disposing of those materials, replacing the new roof, and again, I'll let the engineers give kind of the technical aspect of what the proposed replacement roof composition is, but that's the all-in cost. And I will I think I want to note that certainly these are estimates, square footage estimates, unit cost estimates that are really based on bids that we most recently saw at Irvingdale, and kind of working back from the what those costs were divided by those square footages, and then applying them to this facility. But what we would hope is that the bid would certainly be competitive, or that we'd hit a hot bid environment and maybe get a little better number. But these are the engineer's best estimates, certainly.
So I guess the question, and the engineer can come forward, because I know on the gym side, which is roughly about 13,800 square feet, our share is 82,800, which means the Lincoln Public Schools will be matching that, and they'll have to pony up 82,800 for that. And then, but if you look down on the recreation center, which is our cost, the city's cost, For a smaller square footage of a roof, 9,383,000 square feet, it's actually more. It's 112,596. So if you add all those numbers up, it's roughly about $278,196 for a new roof on the gym side and the community center side for the structure that's only 23,000 square feet. That seems substantially higher than what a new roof in commercial facilities cost. And so that got flagged, and I don't know if those numbers were the accurate numbers. I know that we are going to be partnering with LPS on the gym side, so that's, about 160,000 there, and then 112,000 for the 9,300 square feet. Did somebody
I am
wanna-
going to look to Dan and Tony to see if they can maybe
Those
provide
numbers
some.
just seem a little bit high to me for a 23,000 square foot facility.
Yeah, I'm Dan Thompson with Engineering Technologies. I'm a mechanical engineer on the project, but the roof costs actually came from an estimate from a roofing contractor, Sprague Roofing, who gave us the estimates. The type of roof that we're proposing here is a little bit different than you probably see in a lot of your commercial buildings. It's a modified bitumen roof, which is basically a tar roof. And so the reason why LPS kind of goes with that type of a roof is it's got a longer life cycle on it. Typically, it's about a 20-year roof, whereas a lot of your commercial roofs are a 10 to 15-year roof. So it's also a thicker roof. So it's the type of roof really that kind of makes it a little bit more expensive. So that's where we're seeing the $12 to $13 per square foot for the roofing cost itself. So that's about what you're seeing for a commercial bid of that type of a roof right now.
So the other question I have is on the efficiencies, because we know that when you put a new roof on a structure, there are tremendous energy savings that way. And when you add the LED lighting, there's additional utility savings. But when you did the cost analysis and projections, it seemed like there are two options. One working with the geothermal on both sides, and one that is just working with a boiler system. And it seemed like in the projections there were no energy savings from the new roof
Right.
and just the LED lighting.
Yeah, the actual insulation in the roof is not changing itself. So we're not changing insulation. What's up there is a really good roof insulation now. So we're not changing insulation. So the amount of insulation between the two systems is gonna be the same. So you're not gaining extra value, let's say, out of that roof. What you're gaining is a life out of the roof. You're not gonna have any more leaks. Right now, the life of the roof, the warranty of the roof is out. So what you're gaining is a new roof, a new warranty, a new life of the roof. So we're not trying to gain energy efficiency out of a new roof.
So, not to get all geeky on people, but can you tell me what is the existing R factor of the?
I think it's around an R30 right now, I believe.
Okay.
So it's a pretty good roof and a pretty good insulation up there, so.
And then how did you project the LED lighting efficiencies? There didn't seem to be any reflection of savings on that.
Yeah, the LED lighting, when you compare an LED light fixture itself to, let's say, a fluorescent T12 light fixture, if you were to go in your house and replace an LED into an old fluorescent, you get a pretty good payback on that type of installation. Usually you're gonna say it's gonna be maybe a year, 2-year type payback. It's gonna be really good. The energy efficiency of an LED is considerably, it's like a fourth of what a typical fluorescent is. But what we're doing here in this project is you really can't do that in a commercial application. When you go back in with a fluorescent, first of all, you can't put a LED tube into a fluorescent fixture. They don't make it. You've got to have a different, the ballast is not compatible with an LED. So basically, you're going to take out the whole fixture. You're not taking out just a tube or a bulb anymore. You're taking out a whole fixture, and you're trying to put a new fixture back up. Then the next thing that comes about is they have different light levels between between the LED and the fluorescent. So you usually don't put up one for one. You don't put up one LED where one fluorescent fixture was. So the next thing that happens is usually your lighting layout in your room changes. So then you start getting into ceiling tiles. So what I'm trying to get at is it's not a simple, like in your home, changing out a bulb or a fixture for a new LED. So the costs that we're getting into for changing out fluorescents to an LED, there's additional costs that are involved, which makes the payback longer for changing out.
I think we are aware of that, but there should be still some energy.
There is energy savings, and that's showing up, I believe, in the payback in the utility numbers that are showing up here. There's a considerable savings in utilities between the two, between the boiler system and the heat pump system, that is showing up in the utilities.
But you're saying you're just showing the utility savings on the new heat pump side. And I'm saying that, with the new roof and LED lighting and all the other enhancements that are going to be taking place in the facility, there seems to be
Now, we didn't figure in new LED lighting into the model on the old system. This is just comparing mechanical systems. So this is just mechanical in here. This isn't.
It seems like the utility cost is the same as the current one.
For the new heat pump system versus the old existing boiler system, I believe the first year, if you look at that in the kind of the graph that we had given you, it's $26,000 versus $16,000 for the heat pump system. There's $10,000 difference.
Right, but the current utility cost is about $26,500 a month. So there is absolutely, it's an increase in the utility costs going to a newer, gently used boiler system that's only 4 years old. So that seems pretty negligible.
But I think part of that is it's the new standalone, gently used boiler, but it's also removal from a central, more efficient boiler system. We're going to a standalone boiler that's got to now just serve the rec center, where we're decoupling from a larger boiler system that served the whole facility. So we're seeing a little increase into a little utility increase to have to use or energize that new boiler.
And let me say one more thing. The utility costs that I think you're referring to, first of all, there's two bills out there. There's a bill for the rec center, which you guys get for the city. There's also a bill that goes to LPS for their equipment. The bill that goes to LPS has the boiler system, the gas usage for the boilers on their bill. So you're not seeing that in your utility costs. So right now, in other words, you're not paying for any of that gas that you're using to heat your facility.
For the gym side only.
For your facility, or all your facility.
I guess we
think we
would like
pay-
to believe that there
No,
is.
But the bills that are showing up here, you're not seeing that in those utility bills that you're probably referring to.
We're billed by LPS for our share of those utilities, so it's a separate billing. I think that's what.
Okay, and then I guess the question is still the same, that why aren't there greater efficiencies? Or maybe a better question is, have you looked at other systems that are more energy efficient rather than going with the gently used 4-year-old boiler system for a space that's only, the roof is 9,383 square feet, but the interior of the community centers is 12,200 square feet. Have you looked at another type of system rather than maybe that would be more efficient?
And the reason why we didn't look at a different system is because to go to a different system, you're gonna involve more costs to remodel your building then. Right now, it's a variable air volume system, and it's got hot water piping running around your facility. It's got variable air volume boxes above the ceilings. So if you're gonna change the type of system, you're gonna have to go back out and start removing all that old infrastructure and putting in new infrastructure to be able to support the new system. So what I'm saying is it's gonna be very expensive to try to change that system that's out there right now.
Can you tell me a little bit about the architectural costs? It seems like the architectural costs have increased per each version that we have gotten. And the architectural costs, I understand, include.
On option A.
On option A, yeah. There are two options. We're just trying to find the best way to utilize the limited resources of Parks and Rec.
Sure, and I agree, and even in looking for space, I'm gonna kind of tell you how that design kind of went through it. Looking for space, even to put these new things in the rec center, we've been trying to discuss it with the people in the facility, and right now the space is very limited, and we prefer not to add additions onto the building because those are expensive. So we've been trying to find every little spot in every corner of the building that we can to be able to put the new equipment into. So I think there's been a lot of probably back and forth on where all that can go in the building. Now, option A, I'll let JJ maybe discuss that a little bit more on the.
When you say get the equipment, is that for the new geothermal?
Both of them, actually, because we're gonna have to have new equipment for the geothermal. And there's gonna be new equipment where we put the boiler at. So both of them are gonna have to have somewhere to put that equipment into the facility or build an addition.
But LPS said they'd let us leave the boiler there.
No, they're giving us a new boiler, a new used boiler, but we need to find a place in the rec center to put it. Because they're going to use all the space they had for boilers before for the new HVAC system. So we're going to have to give up some space in the rec center, some storage space, which the rec people right now are like, don't do that.
The
But
boiler in these days doesn't take much space.
doesn't take much, but it takes space.
What are you talking about, 40 square or 100
Oh, no,
square
we're
feet?
talking, you're talking about a boiler, you're talking about some kind of a way to feed water into it. You're talking about pumps, because you've got to pump water around. You're talking about electrical panel. I mean, there's just a lot of things that go along with a boiler that somewhere you got to. So right now, I think we're probably talking around 150 square foot, 200 square foot, somewhere in that range.
Like a small office.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll show you my boiler.
And so, getting back to the architectural numbers, so the difference between the architectural numbers that are in option A and option B are essentially that small. With option B, the boiler, we're going to use internal space in the rec center to house the boiler. And so the number that's there for architectural is replacing the ceiling grid, painting, replacing flooring, that kind of thing. In the option A column, where the number's higher, we are having to do a small addition to get the HVAC equipment. We just can't get it in the existing space. So there is a small addition, and that's what makes up the difference between those two items, between B and A. And when you saw an earlier version of this, as we talked about, in option B, an architectural number was omitted from the analysis, and so that's the big increase you see in B from an earlier version.
If I may, I'll continue with what Ms. Raybold was saying, but I've got a 60-some thousand square feet that's powered, heated by a boiler. I used to have a locomotive boiler, and 1925, it lasted to 2002. And so we finally replaced it with a modern one at that time, so I've had about 14, 15 years. But I mean, it's really a tiny thing. I was amazed, and what have you. And and with that experience, 60,000 square feet, we'll just use that for, I think maybe a little more, but you know, I'm not encountering these utility costs you're saying. And what concerns me with the projections, say on what's called I know you want to replace the word existing with renovated or whatever, but regardless, option A will say. And again, what is being presented to us in legislation form is option B.
Okay.
And I know, I guess it surprised Jane and me because we haven't had the open dialogue. We keep getting numbers here that just don't fit. In fact, on the payback even of the geothermal, I know Mr. Johnson has said, well, maybe it's 14 to 21 years or 25 years. We're a lot of slough there, and as you go farther out and project 25 or 50 years, it depends where you start and what assumptions you make. But the utilities just kind of astound me, and then you couple those with your maintenance column. I mean, how can you spend $1,000 a month to go look at a boiler?
Well, when you've got a boiler, well, first of all, maybe we'll address the utility costs. I think these utility costs of $26,900 for the existing boiler system is very, very close to what you're seeing now in your existing utility costs. I think they're almost exactly what you're seeing now.
Very close.
And what that means is we've taken out the old boiler from Lincoln Public Schools, the old central plant, the pumps down there, and we've replaced it with a new boiler in your place with pumps. So it's basically an apples to apples. There's not much change right there. So your utility costs for your facility aren't going to change very much. So it's an even swap out. So, I mean, when you're seeing $26,000, that's roughly a little over $1 a square foot, I believe, which is pretty typical for a variable air volume type system in a commercial application, $1 a square foot.
And what all is in that utility you're projecting?
This is gas costs, this is electrical costs.
But we're just talking about the rec center is only 12,000 square feet, so that's a little bit more than $1.
Well, then you've got the gym too, so, I mean.
Well, isn't that the shared cost between Lincoln Public School? So this is for both sides. This is what you're saying. This is utility.
Yeah.
But don't we split the utility costs? The Lincoln Public Schools takes care of the gym, or are we going to go forward and share all those utility costs
I
with
believe
them?
that's the plan, is to share utility costs, yes.
Yeah, I'm still, I mean, when you grow these numbers out, I think you used a 4% assumption in here.
Right.
it starts getting lofty, it drops back after like 25 years, that actually the geothermal, if it goes on the current schedule, it goes back negative again, although, again, using Mr. Johnson's acquiescence, that maybe you're looking more like a 14 or closer to 21, 25-year payback on the other proposal. That changes the dimensions here. And so it's just been very difficult for me, based on my own experience with buildings that aren't necessarily the most efficient because of the brick walls and being 100-and-some-year-old buildings, but I don't have these costs.
Sure. I mean, you're seeing a $10,000 per year savings between the heat pump system and the boiler system. So I think that's gonna be pretty accurate comparing what we've done before with past LPS projects. If you go look at Irving, or if you look at some of these other buildings, I think you're gonna see a typical, pretty much a typical range like that, or Calvert, or any of those facilities.
Can you share with me and break out some of, explain to me on option B, which is reusing the 4-year-old boiler, there's a $44,400 charge for the temperature controls.
Correct.
And there's a $47,500 charge for the pumps, piping for the gently used boiler. But we've never really seen a breakout of the architectural costs, because we know, and we are very supportive of the renovations and rehab of that facility. But can you tell me, why is those costs so expensive? You know, about $91,000 for installing, it's like swapping out one system for another. And I understand there are some upgrades, but just for the HVAC system alone, that's $91,000. And for a space that is so small, just
Well, this is
the
including the
community.
gym now, remember that. But temperature controls, maybe we can talk about that.
No, that does not include the gym. It is the separate cost just for the rec center alone of 12,200 square feet. It's 44,400 for temperature controls, 47,500 for the pumps and piping for swapping out a boiler system. That's a lot of money for a 12,200 square foot facility. We're using, apples to apples.
Well, first of all, we'll talk temperature controls, for instance. What you have right now is you've got a central system that is fed out of the Lincoln Public School, Belmont School. So the temperature control system is around 20 years old. It's an Andover temperature control system. So what's gonna happen as soon as LPS does their renovation, they're gonna take their old controls out of the school, which is the Andover system. They are going to update to the newer version of Andover controls. So that Andover control system, which is now controlling your portion, doesn't work anymore because they can't talk to the old system. So all of a sudden, your old temperature control system that you have in the rec center isn't gonna work anymore. So what you've got to do is you've got to come back somehow, whatever you've got to do with your old control system, and update it also. Otherwise, you're not gonna have a temperature control system.
So for $44,000, we have to install new temperature control system that should be complementary to this used system.
Right.
Why, the question to you, I would strongly encourage you to look at an alternative system of a HVAC rooftop unit that would cover 12,200 square feet much more efficiently and cheaply, with the understanding that you'll probably have to replace a lot of the ductwork. But that would be an add-on cost, but there should be the efficiencies going to a system like that rather than the $91,000 for the additional HVAC work that you have to do. Oh, I'm sorry, there's additional HVAC work and flue of $2,500, but, and then electrical connections for all of that. That's another $8,000, so that's another $10,000. So we're talking over $101,000 for an HVAC system for a 12,200 square foot facility, because the LPS will go forward with the improvements on the gym side.
I mean, we can talk rooftop units if you want to, but when you start setting rooftop units on existing structures, they're not made to handle weights of equipment. So
It's just a simple modification to an architectural.
No. You're talking structure, you're not talking simple modifications. You're talking structure up there that you've got to get in and modify roofs. You've got to make sure the structure can handle the weight. Then all of a sudden, you're starting to talk about redoing all the ductwork, which is the majority of the cost we're doing for the heat pump system. So you're talking big dollars to redo all that ductwork. which is coming from air handlers that are located in other parts of the building right now. So it's not a simple thing of going back down there and reconnecting onto existing ductwork. I mean, when you start to change the fundamentals of the system, that's when you start talking about big dollars. And that's why it's so expensive to modify to go to a heat pump system.
But even between option A and option B, we're going back to the geothermal, combining them. There is a huge difference. You know, we've seen one option that showed a difference of 800,000. The latest option shows a difference of about 554,000 if we work with the gently used one. And I guess maybe to land, the question is, oftentimes we hear in front of this body with Parks and Rec that the needs are so great. And there's so many facilities that need some improvements. Did you want to come and talk about the capital improvement budget and the funding gaps that we see every year and the requests that come in every year and the funding that is just not there, even with Keno? Unless, I don't know, John or...
Fine. Well, I would have one question on the roof. You said we want to follow what the LPS has done on a bitumen roof. I mean, you talk about weight loads, why not get all that gravel and everything off, go to a TPO?
An EPDM.
Well, EPDM, once again, is a less expensive type of a roof, but it doesn't have the life of the roof that is preferred by Lincoln Public Schools.
You get a 20-year warranty. Yeah.
You get a 30-year warranty with a modified bitumen, and so.
But some roofs outlast that warranty for 10, 15 years, so
This isn't my decision on the type of roof. You'd have to talk to LPS.
Got a 30-year-old TPO.
I'm an engineer, so I'm not a roofing person, but I just know what the reason is.
Business owners, we deal with this on a daily basis. We know how much things cost, and we want to make sure that we get the best savings for Lincoln Public School and Parks and Rec, because there's so many other requests out there that we feel we need to address too.
I'm an advocate of joining the facilities together because I think the city gets a great benefit out of these facilities. I mean, like Lincoln Public Schools, they have people on call that all they do is temperature controls, for instance. So they have people monitoring your building, getting your alarms, setting your temperatures, and they're basically doing that with their people that they have in staff, in-house, so that the city doesn't have to employ those type of people. They've also got maintenance personnel that go out and do a lot of the maintenance on your facilities, so you don't have to have a person that does boilers, for instance, on your facilities. So I think it's really a great benefit of what you're getting from Lincoln Public Schools. Another thing that needs to probably be brought up, but the well field itself has been paid for from Lincoln Public Schools. They've already built this well field out there, so they're offering it to you at no cost, basically. So you're getting the benefit of using that well field, and you're not having to pay for it. So I think there's a lot of benefits that maybe you're not seeing that you're getting out of the project that should be brought up.
Well, I mean, the benefit differential is anywhere from $554,000 to $800,000. And if you project that out 10, 15 years, I just don't see the benefit for the community center side. I think there are more efficient ways about achieving that and still being a good partner with Lincoln Public School on the gym side. And I do agree that there is value, but I think when we have so many other needs throughout the whole system of Parks and Rec, it just seems a big spend for a small footprint when we're doing all these amazing other upgrades. So, into this facility, which we believe in. We absolutely believe that that's necessary. But Lynn, did you want to talk about
Jane, do you mind if Carl asks a question before he sits down? Go ahead.
Just a question about performance. I've been in the Belmont Rec Center many times. Summer and winter, temperature control is bad both times. Brutally hot in the summer, cold in the winter. So both systems, I mean, will it do the job? I'm especially concerned about air conditioning in the summertime in the gym and facilities there.
Yeah, I think the gym, JJ had mentioned previously that the gym is not air conditioned currently right now.
Right.
So the gym will be air conditioned under the project. I think regardless of which option that you take, I think we are adding air conditioning to the gym, so it should be a lot more pleasant to be in there. The rest of the facility, hopefully with the new temperature controls that we're putting in there, should be able to get you good comfort throughout. So I think you're going to be happy with the end result.
Thank you.
Okay, Jane, you have questions for Lynn?
Do you want to talk a little bit about Parks and Rec capital improvement funding needs every year? It comes to about.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to do that. we do a 10-year facilities plan that we look at and we see what upcoming repair and replacement projects we think are going to be happening. We do that on a 2-year cycle ahead of preparation of the budget. The last time we did that, we had about a $2.9 million annualized need. There are some projects that have been completed at this point, like they're just about to be completed, like the Woods Park Tennis Center project, so that brings that number down. There are 3 primary funding sources that go into the Parks and Recreation CIP. One of those is Keno. It's about $1.3 million here, a little over 1.34 million that we are putting into the CIP. There is the revenue that comes in from cell towers that goes into the capital improvement program. That's about another $250,000. And then the rest of it's general revenue by and large. The most recent budget, we still have a gap, an annualized gap of about $765,000. So even with all of the efforts that have been put forth, we still have a gap moving forward. So we're not able to keep up with repair and replacement as we'd like to. The major pressure is really, Keno is what it is. It's gradually been increasing, but that's not variable very much. The cell tower leases, again, they're not variable. The variable factor really is how much general revenue money can be put into the capital improvement program. Portion of the funding strategy on this is general revenue, some savings from a prior year budget, and a portion of it would be Keno funds is what we're proposing at this point. And we'll move forward with whichever approach the council is most comfortable with. And like I say, I really think this is kind of that short-term, what can we afford to spend now versus that longer-term investment. What I meant to say earlier, Scott Wieskamp was here. Scott is out of town this week, unfortunately. Scott would be a huge advocate of the ground source or the ground source heat pump system. LPS manages about 7.7 million square feet of space, and they've converted about 90% of that space to ground source heat pump systems. So they've made that policy decision that they're going to invest in the long term for those facilities, and I really think that's one of the questions here. And again, and I also recognize that funding is limited, and we collectively may have to make the decision based on available resources as opposed to that long-term vision. So,
okay, Trent.
Lynn, what's your recommendation? What would you like to proceed with?
You know, analyzing all this, one of the things that we did that John mentioned was kind of the range of payback on this, and we knew that there were some questions about the maintenance costs. So one of the things that we did was that we took the maintenance costs out of that cost analysis. So it was only essentially the infrastructure costs and the utilities. If you take the maintenance costs out of it, the payback is about 21 years. So the payback on this system is probably somewhere in that range of 14 to 21 years. From my perspective, I think the long-term investment is worthwhile. I would be an advocate of proceeding with LPS and using the ground source heat pump system. It's consistent with what we've done with other facilities, and I do understand it's the added cost, but that's my recommendation.
Thank you.
Any further questions? John?
You know, all along, or at least up to just recently, we were talking about whether it's option A, option B, work with a modified existing boiler or go the other, and then suddenly, and we were told that had to be decided right away because of LPS, and so it's somewhat frustrating, I think, to Jane and myself that now we're just saying, oh, we got to hurry up and do it, but yet then there's a delay that you've asked for a couple of weeks to see about the funding source, and it's like there's not a huge emphasis on what is the best approach, but now where do we get the funding? And the city is in a fortunate position in that we've got 4 or 5 different pots of money that are going to be excess funds, and to me, I don't hear anyone talking about the taxpayers getting them money back because we raised substantial amounts there, and they're going to get more on the real estate revaluations. The sales tax revenues have projected anywhere from $700,000 to $900,000 a year from Amazon. The property valuation is saying $2 million or more a year. Keno monies are coming in more, and we also then have the pension plan. We just had a briefing on that, but we can never put enough money in there. And last year, I remember distinctly when we took that 1.2 million or whatever from Keno to go to the Woods Tennis, I said to you, don't come back for more. You've now used up a lot of your repair and maintenance type things. Get it from there. Now, whatever solution is done here, number one, I will support the lower price option. I think that's just much more sound as a business owner or property owner myself. That's what I would do. I'm all for energy efficiency and so forth, but there's a time and place. It doesn't always pay back. Secondly, as far as funding, I want you to pay for that out of Keno. I want you to use Keno for what it is. Now, if we need to loan some money on an interloan from another reserve we have, be glad to do that. But you're going to pay it back with future Keno revenues, interest and principal. And to me, that's the sound way to do it, so that you're confined that you have this Keno. Otherwise, what we're doing is we're opening the door to taking funds from elsewhere that are needed other places more, and you're just upping things you want to do to use the money. It's like, gee, we got this extra money, let's spend it. And no one's really thinking about the taxpayer. And the taxpayer's on the hook for the pension plan. Those are huge obligations. And I just think you need to learn to work better within your means. I shouldn't say learn, but work more. You're not spending your own money. Jane and I spend our own money, or those of immediate investors. And it's a whale of a different situation that you have to do that. You have to pay a bank back. And that's one of the difficulties with government. We work with opium. We're drug addicts, opium, other people, OPM, other people's money. And it's easy for us to sit here and say, oh yeah, just go do it. But is it the right thing? I think, no, we have to have some fiscal management of it. And I think that's where Ms. Raybould and I are coming from, is in this particular case, and with the numbers being so fluid, now you're talking that 14 to 21 years, maybe more, you're kind of the old trust me deal. It really concerns me with what I experience in practice with my own boiler. Today tomorrow morning I put in $5,000 of new heat pumps, or new pumps for it. But that's after 16 years. And whatever. And so, in fact, no, those are 25-year-old pumps, because I put them on the old locomotive boiler, and now they're wearing out. But that's 25 years. You're showing stuff here in 7, 8, 9 years. It just doesn't make sense to me, and I'm sorry. I'll go with the lesser price, reconfigured boiler, or for that matter, what you're talking on price, go buy a new little. I don't know how big the one is. I'm sorry. I just, as a building management and so forth, I can't accept those numbers, and that's what I do.
Jane.
And I do appreciate all the work that you've put into this, but I do have more questions. I don't want to take up any more time, because I think we've really done a good job taking up a lot of time on this, but I do want you to come back with a breakdown of the numbers and how you're estimating them. I'd like to see what all the costs are going into the architectural on option B. And I'd like to have a better understanding of what the costs are for the boiler system and the temperature controls that are being projected for the gently used system. I know either way, Belmont is going to look fabulous by the end of this project. The gym is going to be wonderful. It'll have wonderful temperature, as well as the community center. So these improvements are going to go forward. I think we really struggle with what is the most cost-efficient, cost-effective, short-term and long-term way to go. And the other thing I want you to go back and look at and break down the costs are the roof on the community center side. Is there an alternate means of roofing materials that can be used on that don't have to mirror what's going on the gym side for additional savings? But I, like with John, I would only go for option B, because I think we can create the rec center as well as the gym fantastic for that amount of money, and try to reduce the cost. So would you be able to come back to
We'll
us
work
with
on pulling that information together, and we'll get a memo to council with that information. And I understand that we've requested that the council hold the public hearing open to the 27th, so there'd be another option to ask any questions about that memo when we get it prepared.
Okay. That's great. Thank you very much.
Just one last question, because I think
please.
There's been a little bit implication about this being an approach that isn't approved of, but this is an approach that you've implemented twice before, correct?
Really 3 times before, when you count the F Street
Can you just help us
Community
understand
Center.
that?
Yeah, as I said, when S Street Community Center was built, we made the decision at that location to use a ground source heat pump system. And then we are co-located at Calvert Recreation Center, Calvert Elementary School, Irving Recreation Center, Irvingdale Middle School. And this very same approach of partnering with LPS taking the lead on the project, trying to come up with the most cost-efficient approach as they're responsible for taxpayer dollars as well. And so we have used this very same process on those other two co-located projects.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this item? All right. Next item, please, Teresa.
All right, next we'll go on to items 27 through 29. They are approving the 1222 P Street redevelopment agreement with Mortar Investments LLC relating to the redevelopment of the property at 1222 P Street to demolish the existing building except for approximately the front 20 feet abutting P Street by renovating the facade of the existing building and by constructing 3 new stories over a portion of the existing 2-story building to be used for retail and residential space, amending the fiscal year 16-17 CIP to authorize and appropriate $470,000 in TIF funds, and an ordinance authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $470,000 aggregate principal amount of 1222 P Street redevelopment project tax allocation bonds.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the council. My name is Dallas McGee. I'm with the City Urban Development Department. I'd like to provide some background for you on this project. There are members of the development team that are here today, and they can provide additional information to you as well. Tom Houston, the attorney, Matt Stricker, the developer, as well as Peter Hind, the architect for the project, are all here and can answer questions for you. Also here is Mike Rogers of Gilmore Bill, and he can answer questions related to the tax allocation bond. We were before you 5 weeks ago, and we presented a redevelopment plan amendment to you, which was approved, and during the past 5 weeks, we've been working to put together the redevelopment agreement, which is before you today. This agreement is for the reuse of what was known as the 1222 P Street building. It used to be known as the Swanson Russell building. It was an office building since its early construction about 100 years ago. Today, that building looks much like it did 100 years ago. However, with this reuse, it'll change rather dramatically. The facade of the building will remain. However, there will be 3 new floors added to the building. The 3 new floors will accommodate a total of 29 residential units that will be built, and the first floor will remain retail use. The project there is an investment of approximately $4 million that is being made to reuse the building, and we expect it'll generate about $470,000 worth of tax increment financing that'll be used to assist in that development. The TIF will be used primarily for demolition, that would be interior demolition, for facade enhancements, as well as energy enhancements. I think once this project is done, it will continue to strengthen the P Street district and provide continued reuse of that district and multi-use as recommended in the Downtown Master Plan of 2005. With your approval, the developer will begin construction as early as April, and they're scheduled to have it completed by the summer of 2018. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have, or if you would like to hear a presentation from others.
Questions? John?
Just to clarify on the demolition portion, and then will there be 3 or 5 new floors?
There'll be a total of 5 floors. The building is currently 2 floors, and there'll be 3 floors added on top.
Wouldn't it be more fair to say just the facade's there and then 5 stories are being built behind it?
You could say that, yes.
2 of them are going to disappear. And then
the interior will disappear, that's right. I think the key is the front facade of the building, and that's what everyone is interested in. that will be preserved and enhanced as part of this project. And the upper floors will be stepped back so that it won't be as prominent visually from the street.
Carl.
So how's it going to work? The street level, because the way the building sits now, it's below grade a little.
Yes, and that was a major concern, that there isn't really a street level today. You enter, you either go down or go up. With this renovation, there will be a street level. You will enter on the ground level, and that will be the first floor. You don't have to go down or up to get to a floor, and that will be the retail floor. And then above that, there will be the 4 floors of residential.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Just one question had to do with the type of housing. I know that it's 29 new residential units. Is there a particular demographic that's targeted?
I think the developer can speak to that, but it's not student. Students aren't the target audience. I think it's young professionals and others that want to live in the middle of downtown.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right. There are others who want to speak on this item?
Your picture, Dallas.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, members of the council, my name is Tom Houston. My address is 233 South 13th Street, Suite 1900 here in Lincoln. Before you today on behalf of Brick and Mortar Investments, LLC. As Dallas mentioned, Matt Stricker, principal of Brick and Mortars here, as is Peter Hine from Found Architecture, project architect for this project. Dallas has very accurately described the matter in front of you. We're in front of you on January 9th for the plan amendment. We're in front of you today for 3 items, the first of which really deals with the redevelopment agreement itself. As envisioned, and I think this architectural rendering does a better job of describing or depicting what's going to happen here, because it is primarily a demolition of the existing structure. The front 20 feet will be retained, but even the interior of that will be reconstructed so that there will be, the split level will be removed and there'll be entry at the grade level. And then 5 new stories will be constructed behind it. But still, the first floor of approximately 3,500 square feet will be retail, and the 29 apartments on floors 2 through 5. The tenant mix or the unit mix is primarily studio apartments and 1-bedroom apartments. One of the things that we have negotiated into the redevelopment agreement is a right to have up to 22 parking stalls for the residents, because we think that's important within adjacent parking garages, focusing primarily on the Q Place garage and also the University Place parking garage to the southeast. The redevelopment agreement does envision an investment of approximately $4 million. We have calculated and projected a valuation increase of $2.9 million, which then supports the tax increment financing sum of $470,000. We have identified the uses for that tax increment financing sum, consisting primarily of the demolition cost. That's going to be a substantial cost, but also with the facade cost, not only the preservation of that existing facade, and I think this street level shows a better depiction of what that street level facade will be enhanced as, but also the facade treatment on the upper stories of the structure. In addition to the facade treatment, there will be energy enhancements as a part of the project. Dallas is correct. We intend to move forward with the demolition as quickly as possible. That this should be up on your agenda on third reading and action for February 27th. I wanted to comment just a couple things on the redevelopment agreement that's in front of you. It is a part of the redevelopment world and the community development law. We're always trying to use best practices, and I think this agreement is shows some new model, some new provisions that I think are going to help the process. It does provide for a more explicit approval process of the final construction plans, which is a good thing. I think that's something I strongly support. You'll see the construction plans that are attached to the redevelopment agreement in front of you have been signed by the mayor. They have been approved, and I think that evidence is a good thing. This agreement also implements a new process that really requires the redeveloper to request a notice to proceed. In order to proceed, the redeveloper has to demonstrate that they paid the cost of issuance and they have paid the administrative fee. They have also, the exterior drawings have been approved, and
the redeveloper has posted the necessary security under the redevelopment agreement, and likewise that they have recorded the memorandum of the redevelopment agreement. Those are the four primary items that will be required as a part of that request for notice to proceed. And procedurally and as an evidentiary matter, I think it's a good thing for the process. I think it's an enhancement. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I ask for your support of this project. I think it further evidences the continued investment of the private sector in the P Street corridor following the city's lead, which I think is a good thing.
Roy.
Just kind of a curiosity question. Section 503 on page 20. It says first and priority, second priority expenses on TIF bond proceeds. And the second priority expense says payment of grant or grants in the amount of blank.
That is a number that should be $470,000 minus the $14,700 number. So the final agreement before it's signed by the mayor will have the corrected page there. Okay. It's a subtraction issue, I think. I thought we got that resolved, but it will be resolved.
Okay.
Tom, you mentioned 22 parking stalls potentially in the Q Place garage, or another one, or both. Can you clarify?
Yeah, we wanted to have the ability of our residents to have close adjacent parking. And close adjacent parking, I think our tenants will be flexible, whether it's located in the University Square garage, which is approximately a block to the east, or in the Q Place garage, which is approximately a block and a half to the north. So I think either of them will adequately serve our tenants' needs, recognizing there's high demand for downtown parking in the city's garages.
Carl.
Yeah, Rampart's right across the street. Do they have availability?
My understanding, that's full.
Okay.
But we're trying to focus on where there may be some gaps in availability of parking. We envision our residents, our tenants will not be active drivers. They will be leaving their car for extended periods of time because they want to live and work downtown, I think is the demographic that's being sought here.
John.
Parking is rather king. Would you refresh us on the parking arrangements as far as future costs of those? And
Yeah.
Since those are city garages, what we'd be charging?
Well, under the terms of the redevelopment agreement, the redeveloper has the right to lease up to 22 stalls at the then current monthly rate of the city. The city's always protected that it will be getting its monthly rate. It's more important for us to have or preserve the right of our tenants to have access to parking, and that's what we were trying to preserve.
Okay. Any further questions for Tom?
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to this item? Come on down.
Richard Halverson, 6311 Nimrus Street. And Councilman Camp raised an interesting question about parking. In some major cities, you pay more to park your car than the car is worth over a year. So I think to take a good look to see how much we are subsidizing. I don't think they should get it at market rate. If they got priority, I think it should be above market rate myself. I know I think I've seen in one of the garages where they evidently have that same thing. I've seen some pretty expensive cars parked there. And these people could afford above market rate. Again, you know the situation in those garages better than I do, because one I use is usually by the YMCA. But again, I'm not so sure they should get, maybe they should not get market rate. Maybe they should get above market rate, have to pay more, and the amount goes into the city garage fund.
Would anyone else like to speak to this item? Additional staff questions? I actually have one for Dallas, if you don't mind coming back up. And it is just to follow up with parking. You know, we heard about this project this evening. We also heard about the project for the Kindler Hotel, which might have a skywalk. Well, we plan to have a skywalk to the Q Place garage. Can you just briefly touch base for all of us what the vision is for, amplifying parking availability downtown? Because clearly we're starting to see a lot of pressure on it.
Parking is always an issue with development downtown, and we plan to provide parking for both of these developments. We're working with our parking manager, Wayne Mixdorf, and Wayne indicates that over the course of time, people discontinue their leases. So as a lease is discontinued, we wouldn't automatically fill that prior to this development being finished. We would let people that are transit users, people that would just be coming for a day or an hour or two, use it, and then it would be available for these development projects a year from now or 16 or 18 months from now. We are looking, however, at building another garage downtown, and we're looking at locations right now to address the need, but that would be existing need that we have by employers downtown today.
Thank you. Any other questions for Dallas? All right, thank you.
Okay.
All right, Teresa, please call the next item.
All right, next is item 30, amending Chapter 8.32 of the Lincoln Municipal Code relating to solid wastes by amending Section 8.32.010 to change the definitions of building rubbish and demolition debris to include roof shingles and other roof coverings in those definitions, and repealing Section 8.32.010 as hitherto existing.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Donna Garden. I'm with Public Works and Utilities. And I'm here today to provide some additional information on this minor change we're requesting in Lincoln Municipal Code 8.32. This change you have before you modifies the definition of building rubbish and demolition debris so that asphalt shingles and roofing materials can be disposed of in the North 48th Street Construction and Demolition Waste Landfill. I think, as you all remember, back in May we had a big hailstorm in Lincoln, and that resulted in a tremendous increase in the amount of asphalt shingles to the landfill. In a typical year, we may see 15,000 tons of asphalt shingles. This last year, since May, we've seen 34,000 tons of asphalt shingles. This change that we're asking for today provides us an option to utilize the asphalt shingles in a beneficial way, creating a mound over the garbage that was dumped at 48th Street in the 1950s through the 1980s. Unlike Bluff Road, 48th Street has no liner, so it is beneficial to mound inert materials on top of the garbage so that it allows rainwater to run off rather than through the garbage and potentially carrying pollutants into our groundwater. For that reason, I think asphalt shingles make a good candidate for that service. On the other hand, asphalt shingles buried at Bluff Road serve no purpose at all. They just take up very valuable space in our Bluff Road landfill, and they actually can create layers that hinder our landfill gas collection. So we're asking for this small change in the Lincoln Municipal Code to provide the option for that beneficial use at our 48th Street landfill. Do you have any questions?
John.
Would you go through what costs would be anticipated by the building community or homeowners when they have roofs replaced?
In terms of where we are right now, the shingles can only go to the Bluff Road landfill. That's the way the code is written. State law allows us to put it in the construction demolition landfill, but right now they can only go to Bluff Road. That means they'd be paying the full cost of a ton of refuse to Bluff Road, which is $31.75 per ton. This changes that and makes it definition become construction and demolition waste, and therefore can be beneficially used in that landfill. So it decreases the cost down to $4 per ton of disposal for those asphalt shingles.
Is there any downside to doing this? I mean, just longer term in terms of having this layer of inert materials? I mean, it obviously helps with what's already there, but in terms of what then will be put on top of it, is there any downside that we should know about?
We don't believe so. It is allowed under state law as construction and demolition waste, so we don't see anything there. And like I said, if our point is to protect it from having rainwater go through that garbage, it's probably one of the best materials we can use.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to this item? Seeing none, please call the next item.
All right, next are items 31 and 32. They are Street and Alley Vacation 16006, vacating a portion of the North 35th Street right-of-way stub directly north of Superior Street, and the related change of zone application of Robert Rokeby for a change to designate existing R3 zoned property as a planned unit development district, and approval of the development plan for the Terrace Gardens planned unit development, which proposes modifications to the zoning ordinance, land subdivision ordinance, and design standards to allow for a mix of single-family attached, commercial, and agricultural uses on property generally located at Superior Street and North 35th Street.
Teresa, during our briefing, did you say this one was being continued or delayed till next time?
Yes, we did have a request to continue public hearing for 2 weeks to February 27th.
Okay. Given that, though, we are still open to hearing any testimony from folks who have showed up today, if anyone would like to come forward and speak on this item. Okay. Seeing none, let's go to the next item.
All right, next would be items 33 and 34 then, change of zone 16044, application of Southwest Folsom Development, LLC, for a change from R4 residential to R3 residential on property located at South Folsom and West Amaranth Lane, as well as the preliminary plat appeal of John Wilbeck, James Erbauer, Michael Enenada Sullivan, Heidi Wright, Larry Fromm, Matthew Thomas, and Jody Cranensell from the Planning Commission's approval of a new R3 residential district pre-plat with requested waivers to subdivision regulations and design standards on property located at South Folsom and West Amaranth Lane.
Good afternoon, members of the City Council. My name is Mark Palmer. I'm with Olson Associates, 601 P Street. With me today is Bob Bennis, one of the developers on this project. This is a residential development project. The property was zoned back in 2005. It's a little different fact pattern than most. It's sat, and a developer has finally come along and is looking to develop this property. We're actually downzoning the property from R4 to R3 comprehensively across the property. And we've had a preliminary plat that was conditionally approved at Planning Commission. I believe it was a unanimous approval. And just wanted to show and illustrate a couple of items on this. Just to clarify the change of zone, the property today is R4 to the north and R3 to the south. We are comprehensively changing the entire property to be R3 zoning. There had been a lot of interest in apartments in this area back in 2005, and that's not what the developers are looking to do at this time, and would like to do standard single-family residential. And a couple of other items to address you to is that this is adjacent and abutting the Southwest Village, the Southwest Village PUD. The property in question that we're looking at is directly west of Folsom Street. There is 1.3 million square feet of retail uses approved in the across the road in the PUD area. So this area, it was zoned so many years ago, you might have forgotten this, but there is going to be, and there is interest in development of this property that is spurred up since the knowledge that residential rooftops are coming to the area. Just a couple of other items, just to show that this is, and I'm sure you're all aware, this is not the only place in Lincoln where development abuts acreages. A couple of examples. This is the Grand Terrace up on Highway 2 and 84th Street. This is a residential development around 5-acre parcels. Another one is up in Northeast Lincoln, Harrison Heights addition. This area is all single-family residential that's abutting acreage owners. This area is in conformance with the comprehensive plan, and again, it is zoned. It's a little different fact pattern. It's zoned. It's been of record for R3, R4 zoning since 2005, and this preliminary plat meets the city design standards and zoning standards. And I'll defer to Bob for any more.
Bob Benish,
Address is 1633 Normandy Court. So we're taking this huge leap of faith across Highway 77. So our goal here is, as you guys know, we build homes as well. And we are in the most incredible housing crisis in Lincoln that we've had since the 40s. Just some rough numbers, less than 600 homes on the market in the MLS, and back in our peak when it was a equal market, where it wasn't a buyer's market, it wasn't a seller's market, we had probably 2,400 homes on the market. So that's huge. And right now it's an incredible seller's market. Buyers are being forced to pay whatever they can pay just to get a house. So it's really important that we open up new areas and we start to really look to the future a little bit more. And that's why we have decided to move into this area. This is just one part of the overall grandiose plan that we have. We have also purchased the ground to the north, and we actually own ground almost all the way up to the Spirit ball field. So this is a big area of development. We're talking over 1,000 new homes. We're talking a new school. We're talking just a great way to grow. And I think the big thing about this is the location, the ease to get downtown. We're creating a lot of jobs here in this town, but not everybody wants to live downtown, especially raising a family, kids. And I think places like this are ideal because you can be downtown in 5 or 10 minutes. And so we're real excited about it. We're also working on the commercial. We've got some great ideas there, like Mark has said. We have some users that are already looking into it. So it's just going to be kind of a nice little growth that we've been waiting for and that we've put the infrastructure out for. So this is our first phase of residential.
Carl.
Just real quickly, I did read in here that there's a proposal for a new elementary school in the area.
Yeah, well, yeah, we envision a new school. We have not signed an agreement yet, but this is the perfect location that LPS has been looking.
I think we'll probably have some testimony here in a minute, but
Yes.
individuals who lived in the area now, where would their kids go to elementary school?
Well, currently you would go to Adams, Scott, and Southwest.
Yeah.
And that would continue until the new elementary is built.
Jane.
Bob, can you talk a little bit about the outreach to the people in the neighborhood?
Sure.
To your neighborhood meetings?
Absolutely. So when this was initially zoned, prelim platted, they did an outreach. They had many neighborhood meetings. In fact, Kent Seacrest is the one that held them. Unfortunately, they were back in 2005, if you can believe that. That's how old this project is. Was it 2005? Yeah, that's how old this project is. And it was done back then. So that's when the change of zone happened. That's when the first preliminary plat was done. We are simply coming in with maybe less density and a new preliminary plat. We did notify the immediate neighbors. We did not feel a neighborhood meeting was necessarily in need because we really don't affect driving-wise very many neighbors at all because our entrances come off Folsom. We do not connect to the gravel road that comes up through the acreages. We don't own that property. Now, someday that will connect. I mean, that's what the city will require, but we don't have that connection right now. And so we did send a letter out to some of the neighbors that were immediate, and just to say, if you have any concerns, call our office. Here's a contact person. We included cards. We did send those out.
Other questions? Sydney.
Thank you. So the there's no change to the, what do I want to say? It's actually going to be a less dense development, correct? And so but the area that's being platted is the same area that was considered in 2005. Is that accurate?
It's one portion of the area. The actual, the entire parcel from Southwest 12th Street to Folsom it's annexed. It's within the city limits, and it's all zoned R3 and R4 zoning. So yes, this is one piece of the large parcel that got annexed and zoned.
And since I wasn't here in 2005, that's why I'm having to ask these questions. So I saw that the opponents at the meeting were folks that were concerned with this type of development going up adjacent to their neighborhood without transition. But that would have been the case with a more dense development had it happened in 2005. Is that accurate?
It would, if the market had stayed strong, and I think if everything had happened that was planned to happen on the other side of the road, this would have been developed with apartments and single family. That R3 line did come through. It was the R4 was up on the north section of the parcel, but the entirety would be a lot denser, yes.
Thank you.
Roy.
So we've got some people here who I'm pretty certain are opposed. So I'll ask you a question. At what point do you think their concerns might impact or override your right to develop the property as you see fit? That's a tough question, but that's what we're being asked to decide. I have to go back to school for that one. We'll ask you.
Well, okay, I'm a farmer. I farm for a living as well. I grew up on a farm. I've lived on acreages. I also realize that growth happens, and Lincoln has to grow. We have to grow, right? So we're going to run into these areas and pockets of acreages. And I think that when you buy an acreage next to or abutting land that is zoned for housing, and it's zoned and annexed, I mean, literally, it's ready to go, that you have to be a little bit aware of that when you're buying that, or maybe you had no idea and you bought this and you just didn't know about it. And then that can happen, but it's just something we have to do. If they would prefer, I mean, it was for sale, I mean, I guess you could buy it, but this, in order for us to grow, we have to do this. And it's hard to answer your question because, I mean, will it be a detriment to their neighborhood? It depends how you look at it. Will their values increase? Yeah, probably, because now they're adjacent to housing. Their values just went up. Yeah, probably. Their land is worth more. Will it hurt their way of life? Well, it depends what you call hurt. Is the grocery store closer? Is the gas station closer? Is the health care closer? Is the urgent care around on the corner? Because in order to get those things, you have to have the housing. So it's part of the bigger picture of, growth happens, and it does help people, but will it be different? It could be, but not drastically. I mean, we're far enough away that we're not that close to somebody as, where the houses are located. But down the road, I think when this is all built up, you go all the way north, new schools, yeah, I mean, it'll be different for them. Mm-hmm. But can we stop that? Can we say we can't do that? Because if we are, then we're done here because we can't go any further southwest, east. What do we do with our land southwest that we've annexed and zoned? We can't say, don't build on it, So I think we're doing the best we can to get a good balance.
Any other questions?
Thank you. I see our city attorney approaching. I'm going to give him a chance to weigh in before we invite other speakers.
Rick Pale from the City Law Department. I think your discretion is somewhat taken away from you in this situation here. When we adopted land subdivision ordinance, we put criteria in for having approval of a preliminary plat. And that preliminary plat is supposed to be designed in accordance with existing zoning or proposed zoning that would be amenable. If a person complies with all of our standards and requirements for preliminary plat, the ordinance says it shall be approved. It's not a really discretionary point of view at that time. Your discretion really falls in the area of, is the change of zone appropriate? Do you downzone it from R4 to R3, or are the requested waivers appropriate? But if they've met all the other standards and it conforms to the zoning, then you really have to allow this development to occur. So your hands are not fully tied, but it's a reasonableness of what's being proposed, and downzoning is less intense than what would be permitted by right today. So in a lot of ways, I think your reasonable discretion is taken away.
Yeah, we're getting used to that.
All right. Would others like to speak?
Chair Baird, members of the council, good afternoon. Let's see, can you see that good? My name is John Wilbeck, 6800 Southwest 9th Street. So this is the proposed project here. This is my property right here, right along the corner. I hope you don't mind, I've written down some of my testimony just so I don't forget anything. I and a number of my neighbors are here today to tell you about some concerns we have with this project. I and my wife Carol and daughter Katie own that house, as I showed you, the property directly adjacent to the southwest portion of this project. As planned, and I'll show you the plat again. That notation is mine. This shows that there are 7 new lots going in adjacent to my property. So that's the lots I've numbered. This is approximately the location of my house right there. Of course, we're very concerned about this arrangement. The first one being is that the privacy and quality of life that our family has enjoyed since we moved there 5 years ago, we consider will be severely and negatively impacted. The lots in our neighborhood, again right here, they range anywhere from 3 to 5 acres in size, and the lot sizes in this new project are much, much smaller. If the lots go in as planned and houses are built on each, that means sometime in the near future, there will be 7 separate houses with 7 backyards going in with direct access to my property. When I go out to my back deck after work or tend to yard work outside, I now have 7 sets of eyes from those houses looking out at me. We will not enjoy the same level of privacy, security, or quality of life that we have been fortunate so far to have enjoyed for 5 years. In reviewing the plat, I come away with the idea that the lots maybe were simply drawn to maximize the amount of lot numbers on there, with little practical consideration given to the existing acreage neighbors around there. To that end, at the Planning Commission meeting in January 18th, I made the suggestion that the number of lots in Block 8, which is right here, be reduced, and some of the lots in this block right here be reduced as well. In my view, this would provide for more gradual and logical transition of lot sizes from the lots here in the north to the acreages in the south. I would even go far as to say that I think my family and neighbors would be much happier with the zone of trees or green space, but understand that may not happen. In fact, this idea of a more logical transition from higher density lots to our acreages was mentioned as a good one by the Planning Commission at its January 18th meeting. It was not a unanimous decision, as Mr. Palmer stated earlier. According to that meeting's minutes, a Planning Commission member who voted against approval of the plat stated, and I'm going to quote here, "Lower density in these areas is a good idea. The neighbors raise a good point about transition area. There is no reason to add pressure on those folks who have chosen to live in a lower density area. It is more important for the people moving in to get used to conditions." Again, it is more important for the people moving in to get used to the conditions. To that end, I would urge the council to reject this plat until such time as the developer creates a buffer zone of either green space or lower density lots along the southern edge, and also addresses some other concerns that my neighbors may bring up. As Mr. Benish talked about earlier, we were aware of the zoning prior to us moving in 2012. There was some talk at the January 18th Planning Commission that we should have expected this development to come in to the north of us. This is certainly the position of the project engineer, who stated, according again to the January 18th minutes, the area has been zoned R3 and R4 for 10 years, so the neighbors are aware that this is occurring. Just a little more background, our family moved to our home in 2012 from North Edenton in southeast Lincoln. We moved here knowing full well the potential for a commercial development east of Folsom at Denton and Amaranth, the intersection. We knew of the zoning of this project's lands right here. So the project engineer is right in the sense that we likely were aware something would occur. We had no idea, though, that a residential project with this kind of lot density would be proposed. My knowledge of what was occurring on this land most recently was that soybeans went in there last year and there was corn in there the year before that. Again, I hope you reject this plat until it's revised with an appropriate transition to our property and those of my neighbors. And finally, I wanted to make the council aware of an email I received from a Planning Commission staff member regarding the city's appeal process on this matter. On January 31st, this email stated that the commission had received a number of additional appeals to the Planning Commission's decision to approve this plat. The staff member wanted me to convey to my neighbors that no additional appeal requests are needed.
Mr. Wilbeck, I'm going to interrupt you for a
Yes.
second because your time is actually up, but would anyone care to? Jane?
I have a question for you, and I'd like to hear more about the appeal process as well, if you want to answer that question.
Okay.
And then I have one more question for you.
Okay. The appeal, should I finish that line? Okay, thank you. I just wanted to say if my neighbors have or had a right to appeal, I would hope that their right to do so would not be discouraged or infringed upon by Planning Commission or its staff. But the tone of that email was such that I wasn't quite so sure. I would just say and hope that these are not the standard procedures that Planning Commission staff follow in these cases. That's finishing up that comment.
Okay, and my other question to you is, I can see on your property, it shows that there are 7, is that correct? Seven proposed new neighbors?
Yes, to the north.
And then you had spoke about a transitional or buffer area. What do you consider a reasonable number of lots opposite yours and the other neighbors that are, I guess, further east?
I'm not going to speak for my neighbors, but as again, I proposed reducing the number of lots in Block 8 to maybe 4 by maybe combining, these 3 here, these 3 here. I think something could be worked out, and I'm not trying to redevelop the whole site. I'm just talking about that southernmost portion of it, and particularly where it runs up against the existing horse barn right here at this portion. I think it would be appropriate too to maybe look at increasing some lot sizes there. And granted, I don't know the economics behind that, but it just seems to me like a little more logical arrangement.
So maybe going from 7 or 8 to 4, half.
Yes.
How many are there along that whole south area?
Along this, this is lot number 14 on Block 8, right here. So it starts 1 here,
Okay.
2 all the way to 14.
But just on your property, there are 7.
There are 7, yes. This is
Okay.
my property again right here.
Roy, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'll rephrase my question that I asked Mr. Benish. So at what point do you think his rights to do with his property what he wants to do that is lawful and legal can be overridden by your concerns?
Yeah, there's no good answer to that unless we can maybe sit down and meet together and maybe try to come up with some sort of a compromise on this. But I do understand this is their property. We have ours. That's City of Lincoln. We're not. That's R3. We're ag residential. And so if there's any possibility to try to work something out, and the developer or the engineer hasn't reached out to me about since the planning commission meeting to try to maybe work something out. It's just if I did get a letter from the builders saying, if there's any problems during construction, let me know. We'll help mitigate that for you. So I'm sorry that didn't really answer your question.
All right, thank you.
I have a question for Mark, but I guess
We'll get
wait
to
till
that.
after.
Yeah, we're going to continue to take testimony from
Appreciate it.
anyone who
Thank
would like to come forward. And our city attorney is going to do that first.
Rick Pale, just to address the issue of the appeal and appeal rights, when anybody appeals a decision from the Planning Commission to City Council, the entire matter comes up to you. So the person might say, gee, I don't like lots 1 through 7 abutting my property, and that's their appeal. Somebody else might say, I don't like a street access on a particular street. That might be their appeal. Well, you don't make a decision based on individual items. The item is, once somebody appeals, the whole preliminary plat comes to you. It's under your jurisdiction. People can come in and testify as to whatever concerns they might have, but you're making a decision on the entire matter just as the Planning Commission had the right to do it before the appeal. So that might have been why they were just trying to explain what was happening.
Roy.
So I have a question before we get too far along this, another one. So let's just say we're in this process here, and for some reason the council votes to deny the application. What is the applicant's next step?
His step would be to appeal your decision to district court.
And what do you think, based on your understanding of law, would be the result there?
Well, he would be looking at the criteria for approval of preliminary plat that says if he meets the standards of the ordinance that's been adopted by the city council, the preliminary plat shall be approved. Like I said, there are a few requested waivers, and there is a down zone, but you'd be looking at the overall concept of what would have been permissible as to what they're asking for under the existing zoning. So that's what a court would be looking at.
So were you willing to predict the outcome?
I never predict the outcomes, but I would say it's, and the planning department would have to go through each analysis of every point has been met, but my understanding is that they do comply and have met the requirements of the preliminary plat ordinance. And the preliminary plat is the overall view. Obviously, final plats have to come back and be approved, and they're not always a mirror image of the preliminary plat.
And David,
I
your
was
planning
hoping-
director has approached.
Yes, thank you. I just, since we were on that topic of the appeal process, I just wanted to clarify as far as the communication. I think the intent of the email back to the property owners was.
Would you introduce yourself, Mr.
Sorry,
Carey?
David Carey with the Planning Department. The intent of the email was to clarify that once one appeal has been received, the item will come forward, as Rick was saying, that the entire item comes forward at that point, as long as the appeal happened within the first 14 days after the action by the Planning Commission. Once it's here at a public hearing, as many people as they want to come out and testify on this topic, they can do that at any time and throughout the hearing process.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this item? Please just start by your stating your name.
Yes, my name is Jody Krenzel. I live at 630 West Denton Road. I'm a licensed professional engineer, and we live just downstream of this. Our lot is on the corner here. One of my main issues is the water coming from the watershed, both inside this property as well as perhaps the future addition. It essentially flows down through here, makes a little jog here, and then comes back our place. I just wanted to make the the developer, aware that there's a lot of water that comes down there. From the agency review report, from the Public Works Management from Ben Higgins, he talked about that there was no drainage report included in it. I'm not sure if that's been resolved or put in there. There's no really ties into the existing detention pond that's in the corner here and what that all entails. They also said that current PUD drains, newly urbanized area, unchecked neighborhood acreages, which is the way now. The only thing is, when you put something in like that, you get a lot more runoff and stuff. I'd just like to show you some photographs from in 2007, just to make you aware of what actually has come down. This is looking north from our property. This is actually a mowed area, so it's our lawn, but at times it does flow past the acreage to the north and then ours. And then this was a time in 2007 we had 2 inches of rain in about 20 or 30 minutes, so quite a bit of rain at one time. What happened was, when it got down over our road, it actually went over West Denton Road to a pretty great extent, bringing some debris from up north and placing it on the road. Since then, the road's been elevated about a half a foot, I think, but there's still potential. Right in through here, there's a 48-inch culvert. So that was, from that 40-inch culvert, it actually had rows above the road. So there's quite a bit of water going down there. And I guess I would like to see some type of topographic survey establishing lines and grades within the development, and to assess what, where the water is going. My understanding is with the detention in the corner there, it will take some of it, but I'm not sure all. And that alone has a 42-inch outlet there, which would go into the drains that are now down the Folsom. So there is an outlet there, but the total amount would be quite large, I think, in that a lot of it would become unchecked within my drainage area through there. So, like I said, I'd just like to refer that Ben Higgins from the Public Works Department indicated recommended denial on this preliminary plot, so based on that. So,
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Please come forward and share your name and address.
Good afternoon. My name is Cindy Krenzel. I'm Jody's wife, live at the same place. And I just had a couple comments. When it was mentioned that there were neighborhood meetings in 2005, we bought the property in 2004. We were at the neighborhood meeting in 2005, and there was two groups, my husband and I and another lady. That was the neighborhood meeting. So it isn't widespread communicated to people involved that are close to the area what happens. The other comment I was going to make was on the West Denton Road. Currently is a 2-lane road from Folsom to Amaranth, and my understanding is that until there's commercial development, it won't be widened to 4 lanes. And I know they mentioned potential commercial development, but so that is currently a 2-lane. And then I wondered on the North Folsom, where it is just south of Old Cheney Road, that's currently gravel. And I wondered if at some point in time that was going to be upgraded, and if that's considered city property or county property. Who owns Folsom Road? So those were my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is James Erbauer. I live at 6900 Southwest 9th Street. And I agree with all my neighbors on their concerns. One of the concerns that I have is that we live to the south of the proposed development on Southwest 9th Street. And Southwest 9th Street comes off of West Denton Road into the low-density acreage development and ends where the proposed development starts. And my concern is that we're going to lose our acreage setting. If right now it's a in and out. There's no through street. And I would just like to propose that Southwest 9th Street would just remain just an entry point for our development. And also I'm concerned about that when the development progresses, that they're going to open up Southwest 9th, and that street is not designed for trucks and construction, concrete trucks, and I'm just concerned about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others who'd like to speak?
Yes.
I'm Matthew Thomas, address 1111 Galen Circle. My concerns echo most of my neighbors. We bought the acreage to have seclusion, to have quietness, and this high density will not allow that to remain. Especially, we have moved into Vintage Heights when they were building that, and construction noise is ridiculous. So we expect that to pollute our area as far as noise. My concern is echoing with our neighbors is the information that was directed to us. I received a letter from my neighbor Jim explaining what was going on. There was no explanation at all from the developer. I understand that's not by law the requirement, but in contrast, when the racetrack was going there, they had a meeting and they were very open with their plan. They explained that plan to us, both short and long-term plans, and that was very much appreciated. I am not seeing that from the current developer. And my third concern is with this higher density is what is going to happen with the road project that is happening from Old Cheney and Warlick and South 14th from Old Cheney to Highway 2, and just the congestion of the traffic that this will increase as well with having that much density. I don't know the time frame between those two, but I do know that that project is in line. So, thank you.
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Michael Sullivan, 6801 Southwest 9th Street. And I want to make sure my comments are clear and correct, so I will be reading off of my notes. In regard to the statements about notification, the first notice I received was in the mail about a week, maybe 10 days before the Planning Commission meeting. There was only a couple of us that received notification, but obviously you can see whatever that process is in terms of notifying people about something dramatic changing their neighborhood should have been actually sent to everybody involved. So I also want to make a comment back concerning what Mr. Bob Benesh mentioned in terms of, he said it's hoped that this development with access to water and sewer will actually increase nearby property values. I guess that is his opinion. Our neighborhood, though, is self-sufficient in having our own existing wells and sewer systems. There should be, and there is no immediate nor future positive impact on us that we can see in terms of what happens north with their sewer and water. I would also encourage the commission or the city council here to evaluate the comments relating to the appeal process noted earlier. Why did the proposal go to Planning Commission consent agenda without first allowing the public to provide comments? In talking with the planner's office a few days before the Planning Commission meeting, I was told the proposal was up for approval without public comments. I was not told I could submit a request to have it moved into the public comments part of the meeting before a vote. I would have thought if that was a process, somebody could have told me that. So, in summary of the comments that you've heard already, we would recommend to the City Council to vote non-approval of the proposed development until the following occur. 1, a revised stormwater drainage plan is submitted and approved that will correct and prevent unchecked drainage to all 15 of the properties to the south. 2, a study is conducted to assess road construction impact on east and westbound traffic on West Denton Road during morning and evening commutes. We don't see that this review was requested from the county engineer or Department of Roads to assess this major issue. Why not? 3, conduct an assessment on the proposed plat on the existing 15 acreages property values and report findings back to the owners and council. 4, require the developer as part of his plan to take appropriate building activities that allow for the preservation of our way of life by creating a logical transition zone from his high-density housing to our dissimilar existing acreages. The current plan offers no effort to conform to nor protect the character of our existing neighborhood. You might recognize some of those terms from your LP 2040 plan. 5, change the notification and all future correspondence from the city regarding this proposal from a mere 200 feet to more realistic and natural boundary lines to include all 15 of the property owners. I think it also should be made aware that, according to the reports, public safety said that this proposed development is outside their normal response times for fire, ambulance, and police. Doesn't seem to make sense to me to put in this much housing when you don't have the infrastructure, and so far there's been no school approved. Finally, we, the neighbors of the agricultural acreages south of the proposed high-density residential development, are willing to work with a developer, the Planning Commission, and you, the City Council, to find common ground on the issues presented here today to ensure a win-win outcome for all parties affected by this proposed development. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there others who'd like to speak to this item? The applicant, would you like some time for rebuttal?
I'll let Mark speak to the drainage issues or any of the engineering stuff. That's out of my specialty. I will speak to the bridge over Wilderness Park that we desperately need to help alleviate the traffic, but that's probably another conversation.
You don't want to go there.
You know, when we looked at this ground and we laid it out, it took us a long time to come up with the layout that we have. If you'll notice, it's a big mix. You have smaller lots, you have starter home lots, you have mid-sized range home lots. You do not have luxury home lots because we felt like that would be in a different area, that something like that would work. But if you look, we put outlots against the acreages. We have several outlots, and Mark can go over that, for drainage, which is a buffer. We also, a normal lot size in a starter home area would be anywhere from 50, 55 to 60 to 62 foot wide, in that range. That's a starter home lot. And the depth of those are typically 105, 110, okay? These lots, what we did when we lined against the acreages is we made those 150 feet deep to allow for another 40, 45 feet of buffer between a normal lot, back of lot, to somebody's property. So we thought that was a good idea. You know, when you go from commercial to residential, you know, I mean, it varies a lot, but I can think of one South Point 100 feet buffer between a building or a parking lot. We are probably pretty darn close to that, to their lot line. And so when you look from back of house to lot line, you know, it could very well easily be 100 feet. So I felt like we did plan this the best we could. It's a very expensive first phase of development. We were going to probably lose money per lot in our first phase. We have to put in a turn lane in Folsom. We have to bring sewer quite a ways. We have to build all the drainage detention cells. We have to do a majority of our storm sewers built in this first phase. So you can imagine this is our most expensive phase. And it's also our most nerve-wracking phase, because we have to try to entice people to come out here and say, hey, come build out here in the middle of nowhere on these great lots. And it will be great someday, but for now it's just in the middle of nowhere. So we kind of have some challenges, and thus we have the density where we are. But you know, we probably could have put another 20 lots in this density, but we didn't. And I think we have a great mix. We have starter. We're filling a need is what we're doing, and I'm pretty proud of it. As far as communicating with the neighbors, we tried really hard. We have the current rules is, I believe it's a 200 feet notice that you send out. Obviously, that doesn't hit when you hit acreages, 200 feet. Well, that might only be a very few people. So, and that could be part of the confusion there on that. So, questions?
John?
Yes, Mr. Benish. Some of the concerns we heard from the neighbors were about transition and so forth, and you've got the diagram up there. On those lots that are on West Denton,
okay,
those are the ones you said are about 150 feet deep?
Okay.
Or maybe I misunderstood you.
Right along here.
Yes.
That would be adjacent to the very first acreage buyer person. Those are 150 feet deep lots. And as we go to the east, right in here, and then you can see right along there, there's an outlot. So that is a buffer to that person.
Do you have plans for some type of landscaping that might assist in that?
We
concern?
don't. You know, the added depth is a big deal. Most people are, you know, obviously putting in fences, but we don't have a plan. We don't have a big budget for, you know, landscape plans. And I don't know what's existing. I don't know what's existing on that lot now. Maybe they have trees, or they could put trees as a buffer, you know, to help protect their way of life. If they feel that somebody living that close to them is impeding their way of life, they could do things about it. I mean, they definitely. I mean, I've done it. I put in a lot of trees, so.
And I was just asking if you were going to do anything on
No,
your side of the road, so.
We don't have a plan. We just made them extra deep to keep the houses as far away from there as we could.
Thank you.
Just to address the drainage questions, a full drainage study was provided to Ben Higgins. It was a week late, and so it didn't get in the initial review. And we understand the water and the amount of drainage that flows down through here. We are actually, that outlot and this area through here, that the 42-inch pipe is our primary drainage route. So we are planning to not have any drainage run down through these acreages. It'll all be diverted, and it will all run through the 42-inch pipe. And that's what the area through here, the area up here is also another detention cell. We're gonna slow the water down. Obviously, when you put in streets and roads and storm sewer, it's not gonna flow in the drainage way that it did before. It'll be hitting this road, it'll all be coming down, it'll be going into this location and then out into the main line that was built in the Folsom Street back in 2005, 2006.
Just a couple of questions. Mark, you had shown us some of the other developments like Waterford. Do those developments have a buffer area from the acreages that surround those developments?
I don't believe they do. Harrison.
Like, how deep are those lots that abut the acreages over there?
I did not work on Harrison Heights or on Grand Terrace, but I worked on Harrison Heights, and those lots are basically 60 by 120 all the way around the perimeter of this. So there is nothing that's larger. They're all somewhat standard lots. You can tell that these lots are basically the same depth as the lots of the interior, and those are all 115, 120 foot depth. Grand Terrace is basically the same. You look at, these might be a little deeper along here. They look pretty close to being the same. If not, they might have added 10 feet on their exterior lots, but no specific open spaces or dedicated outlot for a buffer.
The question to Bob, did you consider reducing the number of lots on that, I guess, the south side that abuts the acreages?
And sharing some information, our costs on this, you know, compared to, on a per lot basis, compared to Southeast Lincoln is even higher than Southeast Lincoln, if you can believe that. Just because of the amount of offsites that we have to do with turn lanes and sewer. So with the current plan, as I said, our first phase, we are paying in per lot to probably close every lot. You know, we finally, at the very end, we start to turn it around. But this is part of a bigger picture. I mean, this is part of, you know, the 300 acres north of this. This is the starting point, and this is kind of getting the ball rolling. So to reduce, to put two lots into one, you're talking about then having to sell that one lot for $100,000, which, or more. It isn't going to happen. So we would lose a lot of money.
Can you talk a little bit about if the project goes forward with controlling the construction traffic? As a county commissioner, Waterford Estates had boundless complaints from all the neighbors surrounding it. If this project goes forward, are those roadways going to be constructed first? Is that a condition upon development, or meaning that all the stormwater, all the drainage functions will be in place before construction even?
The first phase is basically down the southeastern portion of the development, and all access will be coming from here. And please note that this development doesn't touch 9th Street, so the access to this development will all come off Folsom Street, which is a city road now. And we will be building the one entrance today. It will be this access point. There will be a future access point once this phase gets developed. But there will be no access to this gravel road. It will all be coming through our main entrance and out onto Folsom Street. But all that infrastructure has got to be paved. It will all be built before any building construction occurs, and it will all be utilizing Folsom Street.
And Jane, to piggyback on that, I think everyone should be aware, I'm sure that the neighbors are, that this will happen to the west of them. It's annexed and zoned. I mean, it's very expensive ground right now. I mean, he's paying, 20, 30, 40,000 in taxes a year. It's going to get developed. This street, the cities will require us to connect to that gravel street and become a street. It is. The city will require it. Now, if you change your mind, that's fine too. We can redesign it. But more than likely, with the number of access points, they do. And when that happens, I don't know it's a county road now. So it's not a private road. I believe it's county.
It's a county road, and I think I went through the Waterford Estates issues as well, and I think when this property and this landowner is looking to develop their property, when we do come in, I think we're a lot smarter than we were back then on terms of connections. I hope we can work some agreement to where this connection isn't made until the last addition or until a certain amount of construction is completed, because if there's a way into the subdivision and it's a shorter way and it's an easier way, everyone will find it and utilize it. And so I'd hope that we'd be able to work something out to delay that connection until you get 90% build out, or at some point to where there isn't the traffic on that road.
Then my last question, I promise. The watershed management civil engineering studies, you said they are done, but they were delivered late.
But just late.
Have they been reviewed? Have they been approved? What is the status of that?
I believe they've been reviewed. I don't know the status of what comments Ben's provided back, but it was a detailed hydrologic study, just like we do on every other development. And the difference for this subdivision, and it might be one of the first, is it does include a water quality component now, and so the stormwater detention cells are larger because we are treating the water quality storms, which it's taken a while. That ordinance was adopted about this time last year, but it's taken a while for subdivisions to trickle through to where we have new developments. But these areas are actually larger to account for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any further staff questions? David, could you just come up quickly? I'm sorry to keep.
David Carey with the Planning Department.
We heard that the drainage study has been submitted. Are there any issues from the planning departments or from the city's perspective?
No, there's no issues to speak of for the purpose of today's meeting. That's a typical thing. We don't necessarily want them to come in late, but as far as having the drainage study come in and eventually get approval, especially at the point of a preliminary plat, that's a pretty typical process to take. So there are no outstanding issues that we are concerned about when it comes to that.
Okay. There was discussion at the Planning Commission meeting about an easement that was recommended by planning and overturned by the commission. Could you explain the reasoning for the easement, for the pedestrian easement, and why that kind of connectivity is important
Sure.
in developments?
And, I have
how it relates to block length.
I have an image that will probably just help with this question. We do have pedestrian connectivity requirements that can be waived when there are good reasons for that. There were a number of requested waivers with this application, and the planning department agreed with 3 of them. The fourth one had to do with making a connection for this Block 7 off of the cul-de-sac. This is probably a prototypical block where we would get that type of pedestrian easement put in. In other words, if we don't have that pedestrian easement to make for a number of about a dozen lots or so that would otherwise have to walk around the block, they would have more of a straight shot down through that cul-de-sac and then have more of an access out to Folsom and the commercial that's over onto the east eventually. So that is the easement that was, the staff did not want to have that waived, but the Planning Commission did agree with the applicant to waive that, and that is what has come before you at this point.
What is your standard for waiving those? What is your, why did you not recommend it in this case, or what, why did they overturn it, as far as you can tell?
Well, in this case, this is, like I said, this is a kind of one of the reasons why we have this regulation on the books. It causes out of direction walking of a significant amount. The other waivers that were requested, really 2 of them were to come out to South Folsom, and the reality there is that you have these planned and to be built access points of roadways, and there really wouldn't be as much of a benefit as far as out of direction sidewalks, because when you go to cross the street in Folsom, you'd have to go back up to these roadways anyways. And so when we look at out of direction walking, it does matter for a pedestrian when it comes to more than a few hundred feet, and that is the case in this Block 7. So that is the basis of the expectation of the pedestrian easement. The Planning Commission did not agree with the staff in that one.
Well, there was conflicting accounts in the staff report between whether or not that would require a reduction in number of lots, and obviously that's a big concern. We want things to work economically for developers, but your professional assessment was that it did not require a reduction of lot. Is that correct? And where do we, how are we supposed to analyze the conflict?
Yes. So when the staff looked at this, we were of the opinion that this would not result in a reduction in lots. It is a typical 15-foot wide easement now. I think some of the testimony was that it was going to require 25 feet. That's not the case. It's a 15-foot easement that's required now for that. I think the 25 came from adding the 5-foot side yard setbacks, which would be typical of any yard in the first place. So that's not really, you wouldn't be adding that on. And it's our opinion on the staff level that you wouldn't lose any of those lots, and we did take a look at that. So that's why we continue to push forward with that requested, not agreeing to that waiver.
Why did you agree to waiver of block length, 1,000 feet?
For the other waivers?
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, I think there were reasonable expectations to have pedestrians get around in a fairly short way. The out of direction, again, expectation wasn't really as great on those other ones. But there was also another one for the Block 8, which would have come down to the south. And looking to those acreage developments to the south, the expectation is that those would not turn over for development for a very long time. And so that request for a waiver also had that kind of aspect to it that we agreed with.
Okay, thank you. First Trent and then Jane.
I had a question for Law, Rick. So when you first came up, you said that there was a city ordinance that basically said that if there was downzoning, we shall approve, right?
I didn't say downzoning. I said there's an ordinance that says that preliminary plats shall be approved if they are designed and set forth in accordance with our standards. Now, you're asking for a change of zone to downzone it from R4 to R3, so they're designing it for R3 probably as opposed to R4. Mm-hmm. Probably could have had more intense development, I think, under R4, so it probably met either way. But
I was paraphrasing a bit, I guess. Yeah. So we're seeing this because it's not currently annexed and in city limits, correct?
No, it is in city limits.
It is, okay.
Yeah. And that's part of the problem is that it was 10 years ago, it was annexed, rezoned to R4.
Okay.
A lot of these decisions were made.
Got it.
They weren't buffer zones weren't put on the property at that point in time, even though it was going to be abutting AG land. I mean, there were a lot of decisions that could have been made or were not made at that period of time as to part of the agreement to annex the property.
Got it. Okay, that clears up my next question, which was going to be, how can we use a city ordinance on land that is not ours, but it's good to know that it's ours. Thank you.
Jane?
The question goes back to the pedestrian easements. In some of the other recent developments, I'll bring up Waterford again, was there a requirement or a need in that case to have a pedestrian easement, and was that also a requirement put on by planning? And think of some of the other developments that have recently.
I mean, yeah, you can point to pretty much any fairly recent approval that's gone through for a new development, and so these requirements for the pedestrian easements has been part of that review process. What planning does is we try to assess the reasonableness of those while being true to the actual requirement. We have that requirement for a reason, and it is so within a neighborhood, especially a residential neighborhood, that the pedestrian activity can be fairly easy to do. And so we do try to avoid long straight blocks of street without the pedestrian capability of getting through that block. So, I mean, we could talk about we could provide a lot of information on where they have been required, but we also have been flexible in the sense of trying to realize that there are some situations where it's not going to gain as much benefit as it would for the cost of the development. And in this case alone, we agreed with 3 of the 4 requested waivers for that purpose.
So maybe we get some more information
Sure.
prior to our next meeting on the number of pedestrian
Sure.
waivers that have been granted or those that have not.
Question for Rick Peo. Just, you've advised us that there's a shall language related to the preliminary plat. How does the existence of several waivers play into that, if at all?
Well, I said that before, is that the discretion, whether or not to grant a waiver is discretionary. So you have a standard, and there is a standard in the code that talks about you're looking at the burden that the developer has to incur in relationship to the benefit to the city. So you don't have to grant waivers. You know, I think you have more discretion there. The issue is, and the ordinance dealing with it talks about at the front of the planning commission, the public hearing, the commission finds proposed preliminary plat complies with the requirements of this title, it shall approve the preliminary plat. So that was the standard that the planning commission had. On appeal, that becomes your same standard. But again, as I said, that's applying to, do you meet the requirements of the preliminary plat? It's in the ordinance. If you do, it becomes a ministerial decision, not a discretionary quasi-judicial decision. Approval of the change of zone, approval of the request for waivers, those fall back into discretionary decisions that you can make.
I guess I was just wondering if there's a relationship between meeting the requirements of the preliminary plat and the existence of waivers. Are you actually meeting the requirements of the preliminary plat if you are granted waivers?
If the waivers are granted, you've met it.
Okay.
If not, you have to redesign it to conform to the lack of the waiver. And that's usually conditions of approval of preliminary plats as such that if it's not waived, then the person has to redesign, submit a new site plan showing the correction.
Okay, thank you. Any other staff questions?
Thank you.
We've asked the staff a fair number of questions. Would you like any opportunity to speak to any of the items we've discussed, just to give your final sort of rebuttal?
Yeah, thank you. Just one point of clarification on the sidewalk and the pedestrian easement. We are planning. Just let us switch over. We are planning to build basically a multi-use trail. It wouldn't be a bike trail, but there's a major electrical line that runs along the north side of the property, and we want to concentrate our efforts on a sidewalk on a trail here where there's 40 feet of open space to where you can walk the dog and the dog can run around, and there's just a little bit more opportunity for something versus putting a sidewalk through between lots. And I've kind of highlighted 1,000 feet is the magic number. We're at 1,085 feet going this way. We're 1,095 feet going that way. So we're not that far off that magic number of 1,000 feet. And with the knowledge, we know a school is looking to be to the north. Bob is in the middle of securing this property and looking at development here, and this probably won't be full retail services like it may have been planned for. There might be something over here, but there's nowhere for these people to really go other than through here. They can go up and around, or they can go north or south. And for us, this seemed like a logical place to have a waiver. And the other waivers, I mean, I don't think the neighbors want a sidewalk. If we build, one of them would be to build a sidewalk and to provide for an easement for a sidewalk running through in this direction, and the other one would be to provide a sidewalk out here, which I guess if required would do them, but it's another one where it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We'd like to create something that's more usable and a usable community element. One thing we're looking at is maybe a pocket park off that area, just to create something that's going to be more central to the development.
And I wasn't questioning those waivers, just the one that you've got highlighted in green, the pedestrian easement there, yeah. Okay.
I'm just going to say one word. If you notice, that's a pretty small cul-de-sac. It's not a long cul-de-sac, but a pretty small cul-de-sac. That doesn't quite make it. So what we've done with our 1,000-foot is we have, the way we're interpreting that rule right now is you basically have a very, very small cul-de-sac in order to get 1,000 feet. So, and cul-de-sacs help create the character, which is the curved streets and the cul-de-sacs, and this is what people want. So my job back home is to deal with the hundreds of people that come into my office and say, hey, build us a house. Sure, what kind of lot? Which, like, we want a cul-de-sac. We want a cul-de-sac walkout. I mean, this is what people want in Lincoln. So we're trying to get a little bit of what some people want, you know, because if people want it, it's going to sell and it's going to be successful, right? If you build something that people don't want, then it's not going to sell and it's not going to be successful. And I don't want to do it. So that's the reason you'll see a lot of times when Mark's designing, especially because I make him do as much character in the streets, you know, and I'm really big on that. I think it's really smart. And as far as putting an easement in there, yes, we would lose value. Nobody wants to own the lot that's next to the sidewalk. They don't want people walking in their backyard. They're very difficult to sell, okay? They're, as far as how many do they get used, maybe not as much as we think. And when you look at this, the orange colored lots, those are the 4 people that could potentially benefit maybe from that sidewalk because they're just over the 1,000 feet. And I mean, sooner or later you say, well, then don't buy one of those lots, buy one of the other ones. I mean, it's so close, and is it worth spending $40,000 to $50,000 to put in a sidewalk when it's so close? And so that's why we asked for the waiver.
Thank you. All right, Teresa, please call the next item.
Actually concludes our public hearing. We can move into the voting session now. Public hearing resolutions. Item 23 is the report of new and pending claims against the city for the period of January 16 through 31st, 2017. Introduced by Fellers.
Second.
And by Carl. Discussion? Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 24 is Comp Plan Conformance 16014, amendment to the Lincoln Center redevelopment plan to add the 11th and P Hotel and Lincoln Commercial Club redevelopment project, introduced by Fellers.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Carl. Discussion? Just seems like another impressive project downtown and involving redevelopment of existing properties and involving partnerships between people who are helping to overcome the challenges of building in the current environment, and will add to our housing stock. Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 25 is the Telegraph District Phase 2 project, introduced by Fellers.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Carl. Discussion? Again, I have to echo Kent Seacrest's comments about how impressive it is that we're building Lincoln's newest neighborhood. We've seen the West Haymarket be built. Railroad tracks were picked up and moved to create a whole new section of Lincoln. In this case, again, private sector developers are working together to overcome the challenges of building in the urban environment and are creating a whole new potential neighborhood right close to the heart of downtown. Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Public hearing ordinances second reading are items 26 through 34. We do have the request on items 31 and 32 to continue public hearing for 2 weeks to February 27th.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Roy and seconded by Trent. Discussion? Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Do we need one on 26 too?
Yes, you want to continue public hearing to February 27th with action on March 6th, correct?
So moved.
Second.
Is it March 6th or March
Yeah,
3rd? Or
'cause
something?
John's-
March 3rd is a Friday.
Okay, sorry. The date.
Yeah.
March 6th.
Yep.
Okay. Do we need, actually, I mean, I guess that was the discussion earlier, was whether or not we needed another week. You know, we've had quite an extensive public hearing. Do people still feel that that extra week would be beneficial? And I guess the question really goes to you guys.
Well, one of us will be gone, so.
Yeah.
So, okay, all right. So again, the motion, could you repeat the motion, Trent?
Is
Or
to
Teresa?
continue public hearing to February 27th with action on March 6th.
Okay. And that was
It was moved by Fellers. I'm not sure who seconded.
seconded by Roy.
Thank
Okay.
you, Roy.
Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. All right, that's everything. Then we're going to ordinances third reading, item 35. Annexation 16014, amending corporate limits map by annexing approximately 9.25 acres at Northwest 48th and West Holdridge, introduced by Eskridge.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Trent. Discussion? Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 36 then is the change of zone 07063A, application of Ringneck Development to amend the I-80 West Lincoln Business Center planned unit development located at Northwest 48th and West Holdridge, introduced by Eskridge.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Trent. Discussion? Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 37 is text amendment 16017. This is various amendments to code sections regarding Urban Design Committee, Capital Environs District, Historic Preservation Commission, etc., introduced by Eskridge.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Trent. Discussion? Just say that, you know, this is coming about because we're seeing a lot of interest in the South Haymarket, which I think is great for our community and speaks well as to the catalyzing power of the West Haymarket. Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 38, text amendment 16018, amending Title I general provisions of the City of Lincoln Design Standards, introduced by Eskridge.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Trent. Discussion? Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Our resolutions on first reading are items 39 through 60. Our ordinances, yeah, you laugh, you wait. Ordinances first reading are items 61 through 69. This time, anyone wishing to address the council not on a matter on a matter not on this agenda and not planned to appear on a future agenda may do so at this time.
Madam Chair,
seeing no one coming forward, I move for adjournment and wish everyone a happy Valentine's Day tomorrow, as well as President's Day next Monday.
Get in on that.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Roy. Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb? Motion carried, 7-0.
We are adjourned.